Chapter 100. Mountain Condensing Sword Chi. After breaking the stone pillar, Yi Chen's eyes flickered with a cold light. He waved a half-moon-shaped sword chi towards the middle-aged man. Puff! The middle-aged man did not expect that Yi Chen would not retreat or dodge. Instead, he attacked him after breaking the stone pillar. Before he could react, the sword chi landed on his body. The mist rolled, and the shape of the middle-aged chief changed rapidly. He turned from a human into a lizard-like monster, with 4 dark red sarcomas on his head. It was extremely disgusting. It opened its big mouth, and everything in the hall turned into mist and was swallowed into its stomach. Yi Chen looked around. This was not a luxurious hall at all. It was a dirty stone cave. The 6 middle-aged men, who were neither smiling nor talking, were just skeletons sitting there. The color of their bones had turned black. In addition, there were a lot of white bones piled up on the ground, extending all the way to the main seat. It was the red carpet they had seen before. Looking back, the side room was also a stone cave. It was a few meters in size, and there was a huge pit at the bottom. The pit was filled with a gray liquid, and sticky bubbles were rising from it. When the bubbles burst, the air that was stored in the liquid touched the cave wall and corroded it, leaving a large area of black marks. Although he knew that everything before was just an illusion, Yi Chen still could not help but gasp. If he had not noticed it in advance, he would have stepped into the gray liquid and died. What was more horrifying was that if he had guessed it right, this lizard-like monster should be a rare Shin beast on the true spirit continent. It liked to suck people's brains and turn their memories into its own. Then, it would refine a kind of Shun Chi according to the memories in its mind and a range of vivid illusion, making it hard for people to tell which was real and which was fake. Shun beasts were demonic beasts that could evolve. According to the number of sarcomas on their heads, their strength could be distinguished. 1 sarcoma-like demonic beast was a rank 1 beast, 2 were rank 2, and 4 were rank 4 beasts. However, Yi Chen was not afraid of it. Among the demonic beasts of the same level, Shun beasts were the weakest kind, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Where's the girl? Yi Chen stared at the Shun beast. The Shun beast growled, its small eyes filled with malice. Yi Chen frowned and remembered that the sea serpent could not speak. Only in the illusion did people think that it could speak. In fact, it had not spoken from the beginning to the end. Everything was based on the atmosphere and its own imagination. Since that's the case, there's no need for you to stay. The previous sword strike had already injured the sea serpent, causing it to lose control of the sea serpent chi. Yi Chen was not afraid that it would use the sea serpent chi again. He stamped his feet and released his hidden force. Immediately, 3 sword chi flew out in a triangular formation. Boom! The sea serpent flew high in the air under the explosion of the hidden force, and forcibly withstood the 3 sword chi. Fiercely hitting the cave wall, the sea serpent suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a wisp of fog. This wisp of fog turned into a ball of fire in the air, burning towards Yi Chen. Watch me destroy your mirage. Yi Chen didn't dare to face the fire directly. He was afraid that it might be a trap. He switched the hidden cloud sword to his left hand and launched the first style of the Tyrant Fist, Tyrannical Rampage. All of a sudden, the fire was integrated into the sword and rushed towards the sea serpent. A horrifying scream sounded. There was a bloody hole in the chest and abdomen of the sea serpent. The edge of the bloody hole was pitch black, and a disgusting burnt smell spread out, making people want to vomit. It's really a trap. The Tyrant Fist itself had no attribute, but it could be integrated into the opponent's attack. At this time, the sea serpent was clearly suffering from its own actions. However, Yi Chen didn't know that the sea serpent's mirage contained 5 elements of Yuan Qi. Fire Yuan Qi was one of them. That fire was the essence of the fire in its body. It was very difficult to condense it again. Just now, it was afraid that it couldn't kill Yi Chen, so it used the sea serpent Qi to cover up the existence of the fire. Then, it took back the sea serpent Qi, which was easy to give people the illusion that it was an illusion. As long as Yi Chen was not careful, there was a high possibility that he would fail miserably. The intelligence of this monster was not inferior to that of humans. In terms of insidiousness and cunning, most humans were no match for it. Yi Chen's pupils shrank, and his heart was filled with killing intent. This sea serpent must not be left alive, otherwise there would be endless disasters. Die! With a low shout, Yi Chen threw out a punch and a sword at the same time. Crack! Bang! Like a broken sack, the sea serpent collapsed on the ground, motionless. However, Yi Chen was afraid that it was not enough, so he continued to attack until the sea serpent was no longer in its beast form. Walking to the corpse of the sea serpent, Yi Chen reached out his hand, and a fist-sized inner pellet was sucked out. The surface of the inner pellet was white, and there was a mist overflowing from it. Just looking at it would easily make people hallucinate. Taking out a slightly larger jade box from his storage ring, Yi Chen put the inner pellet into it. Putting away the jade box, Yi Chen let out a sigh of relief. He looked around, hoping to find some clues. Previously, in the illusion, the sea serpent had described the characteristics of the granddaughter of the elder, so he should have seen her before. He wondered if she was in danger or not. If she was in danger, there was nothing he could do. After all, it had been too long. The sea serpent was not a herbivorous monster. It specialized in sucking human brains. Something was not right. Yi Chen suddenly shook his head. The sea serpent could not speak, so everything that happened in the illusion did not count. But how did it know the characteristics of the granddaughter of the elder? Could it be that those were my own memories? The sea serpent made me hallucinate and said the answers I wanted to know. In other words, no matter who it was, as long as they were in the illusion, there would not be any loopholes in their words because the questions I wanted to ask have already been answered. With a bitter smile, Yi Chen had to admit defeat to the sea serpent. If it were not for the fact that he had doubts in his heart and his unusually strong soul power, he would have been tricked by the sea serpent. After a careful search and finding no clues, Yi Chen immediately walked out of the cave. Outside the cave, the ground was a wasteland full of weeds. The stone bridge was just a fallen boulder. As for the gully, it was real, and below was a lake. Following the way he came, Yi Chen went down the mountain. After a while, the lost ship appeared in front of him. There were more than 10 people standing there, including a girl in a yellow dress. The girl was beautiful and had a clean temperament. If he was not mistaken, the girl was the granddaughter of the old man, Chu Xining. Young Hero Yi, my granddaughter has been found. The old man smiled. Yi Chen touched his nose. That's good. Chu Ming asked, nothing happened on your side, right? No, nothing happened. Yi Chen did not intend to complicate matters. Anyway, the purpose of the other party was to find Chu Xining, so there was no need to mention the sea serpent. That's good, let's go back. It's getting late. The old man nodded. The lost ship was abandoned in place. Everyone boarded the ironwood ship and sailed along the route they came from. On the way back, the number of demon beasts did not decrease, but because it was close to evening, it became more dangerous. Fortunately, Yi Chen and Chu Ming protected the ironwood ship and did not let it deviate from the route. When the last ray of sunlight faded, everyone had already returned to Pan Shan Island. It was a quiet night. The next morning, Yi Chen said goodbye to everyone. As for Chu Ming, it was rare for him to come back, so he planned to stay for a few more days. After all, the curse of Pan Shan Island generally occurred between the 2nd and 3rd month. There was no danger in the 1st and 2nd month, and Chu Ming had only been back for a day. On the ancient water lake, the water was sparkling. A person stepped on a tree trunk and rushed forward. In June, the Inner Disciple ranking competition will be held. I wonder what kind of powerful characters will be among the top 10 Inner Disciples. Yi Chen's white robe fluttered in the wind. While looking at the lake scenery, he was thinking. Chapter 101. Half a day later, Yi Chen came back to the shore. What happened next made him speechless. The owner and the waiter of the ancient water lake had disappeared without a trace. As for his and Chu Ming's horses, of course, they were gone too. Both of them were riding on dark brown horses. Each horse was worth more than 60,000 silvers, which added up to 120,000 silvers, which was enough for an ordinary person to live comfortably for 10 lifetimes. If they didn't want to live an ordinary life, they could buy a small manor, become a master, and have 3 wives and 4 concubines, and countless maids. In short, If there were no disasters in this life, they could have everything. I hope you guys are always lucky and don't run into me again. Yichen didn't care about a dark brown horse, but he hated people who took advantage of others. If he ran into them, he wouldn't mind sending them to jail for the rest of their lives. With a flash, Yichen flew away on foot. In the ancient spring town, in the Flower Fairy restaurant, the owner of the restaurant was a beautiful young woman who was not even 25 years old. Her husband was a famous sword artist in the surrounding area, and she herself was a late condensing reality realm warrior who was known as the Flower Fairy. Ever since she started running the restaurant, her business had been booming, and she was not any less famous than her husband. On the second floor of the restaurant, a lot of martial artists were sitting there, drinking and chatting. From time to time, they would flirt with the lady boss. "Lady boss, your husband hasn't fought for a few years. I wonder how good his sword art is now." Someone used her husband's name to talk to the Flower Fairy. The Flower Fairy said with a faint smile, "I'm not sure about this, but according to him, he can cut the Golden Water River in half with one sword attack." Cut the Golden Water River in half with one sword attack. These martial artists looked at each other. The Golden Water River was a big river near the ancient spring town. The widest part was hundreds of meters, and the narrowest part was also hundreds of meters. Even if he cut the narrowest part with one sword attack, it would still be a big deal. In addition to his powerful sword art, his cultivation was at least at the peak of early clasping Yuan realm, or even mid-clasping Yuan realm. The Flower Fairy took in everyone's expressions and nodded in satisfaction. Ever since she came to the Blossom Immortal restaurant, countless people had drooled over her beauty. If it wasn't for her husband's fame and strength, there would have been people who would have tried to snatch her away. It was necessary to teach them a lesson. You found a good husband. Reaching such a realm at the age of 26 is enough to be mentioned in the same breath as the disciples of the sections. No. As the Flower Fairy spoke, her gaze landed on the seat next to the window. There sat a young man in a white robe. His features were delicate and handsome. At this moment, someone said, "June is almost here. The Sky Cloud Martial School's Inner Disciple competition is about to begin. To be honest, I would like to go and have a look. I want to see it too. Too bad no one invited me." Invite you? Dream on. Even some clasping Yuan realm martial artists weren't invited, not to mention you. Unless you were a relative of one of the Sky Cloud Martial School's inner elders, that would be quite possible. I'm just saying. By the way, Flower Fairy, has your husband been invited? The Flower Fairy nodded. The invitation letter arrived 10 days ago, but my husband is currently in seclusion, so I don't know if he can make it in time. Her husband's name was Song Qingyun, known as the Blue Cloud Sword Artist. He reached the clasping Yuan realm at the age of 21. His sword art was extremely sharp, and he was quite famous in the Windy Nation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been invited by the Sky Cloud Martial School to watch the Inner Disciple competition. TSK, it's a great honor to be invited by the Sky Cloud Martial School. But with the reputation of the Blue Cloud Sword Artist, it's normal for him to be invited. In our area, besides the Blue Cloud Sword Artist, only that old kidnapper and the Five-Mountain Master Pei Zhongli have been invited. Pei Zhongli, isn't that the father of Pei Shaoqing, one of the top 10 inner disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School? Yes, the Pei family is the #1 family within hundreds of miles, and that Pei Shaoqing is also very good. He became an outer disciple at the age of 12, an inner disciple at 13, and now he is only 16, but he is already one of the top 10 inner disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School, ranked in the top 5. Pei Shaoqing, this kid is indeed very good. But don't be fooled by his friendly attitude. He is not friendly when fighting. He is very cruel. If there are no accidents, this kid has the possibility to be in the top 3. Maybe he can even fight for the first place. Not necessarily. Pei Shaoqing's good friend Ghost Sword Li Kuang should not be underestimated either. I heard that he had obtained a low-rank Earth Realm sword art 2 years ago. Even if he had only comprehended 60 to 70% of it, it would still be enough for him to look down on the others. Ghost Sword Li Kuang. The ears of the teenager in the white robe twitched slightly. He could clearly hear everyone's conversation. He did not care much about Pei Shaoqing, but he was interested in Ghost Sword Liquan. He had heard of this person before. He had a unique understanding of sword arts since he was young. His sword art was unpredictable. It was completely different from the normal sword arts. Therefore, he had never practiced the sword arts of the Sky Cloud Martial School until one day, when he accidentally obtained the inheritance of a deceased senior and learned a low-rank Earth Realm sword art, 9 Ghost Shadow Swords. With this sword art, his reputation skyrocketed, and he earned the title of Ghost Sword in the martial world. He could be considered as the #1 sword artist among the top 10 inner disciples. The handsome teenager was Yi Chun. After he lost his dark brown horse, his speed did not decrease. Instead, it increased. He could travel more than 3,000 miles in a day, and this was because he was afraid that he would lose too much Zhen Qi, so he would rest for a while. The ancient spring town happened to be on his route, so he came to the Flower Fairy restaurant to rest. I have already touched the edge of the sword intent, but unfortunately, the lone peak of 13 swords is not that high ranked, so I am still at a disadvantage. I wonder what kind of rewards I will get from the inner disciple ranking competition. Yi Chen's strongest sword art was still the Tyrant Fist. Although the lone peak of 13 swords had the advantage of sword chi, it was still not as good as the Ghost Sword Liquan. As for Pei Shaoqing, it seemed that he was more famous than the Ghost Sword, but Yi Chen was more interested in people who use swords. The Ghost Sword is nothing. Among the top 10 inner disciples, who can compete with the Blood Shadow Sword Meng Chong. He is the only disciple in the Sky Cloud Martial School who has completed the 1,000 kill. Even the core disciples could not do it. I am afraid that this year, he will not only be the #1 inner disciple, but he will also challenge the other core disciples. With his sword art, it should not be a problem for him to be in the top 15. That's true. Meng Chong's status as the #1 inner disciple is undeniable. The others can only compete for the 2nd to 10th place. Maybe there will be even more outstanding inner disciples who will compete with the top 10 inner disciples. It'll be very intense. I will go find my brother-in-law tomorrow and ask for an invitation. He has a good relationship with one of the inner elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School, so there should be a chance. My cousin's teacher used to be in the Sky Cloud Martial School. I wonder if he can bring me. Everyone's heart was itching for an invitation. They could not wait to have an invitation right in front of them. At this time, Yi Chen had already finished his lunch. He threw down a silver ingot that weighed 10 silvers, stood up, and walked through the crowd, heading downstairs. A Jianghu man accidentally saw the cloud pattern on Yi Chen's sleeve and said in a low voice, "I did not expect there to be an inner disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School here. What a mistake." There were a lot of people in the Jiang who wore white robes. Plus, Yi Chen had been traveling day and night for the past few days, so his robes were covered with dust. It did not look that eye-catching, so it did not attract much attention. Now that someone mentioned it, everyone realized that Yi Chen was indeed an inner disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School. The Flower Fairy secretly smiled. She had already known about Yi Chen's identity, but seeing that he was only at the mid-condensing reality realm, she was afraid that it would not be possible for him to compete for the top 10 inner disciples. Of course, whether it was possible or not, she would find out when she went with her husband. She hoped that her husband would come out soon. Chapter 102. Being on the road for a couple of days was not without its benefits. At least, Yi Chen felt that his Zhen Qi had become a lot purer and easier to use. Of course, people who did not have a strong enough soul power would not be able to notice the subtle changes. After returning to the floating cloud palace, Yi Chen walked to the ranking wall. There was basically no change in the ranking this month. The ranking was still the same. As for why, it was very simple. Everyone was focused on the competition that was going to start in June. There was no need to work so hard right now. It would be more suitable to wait until the competition to amaze the world. Looking at the bottom, Yi Chen smiled. He was ranked last, and the few people who were in the same batch as him were all in the top row. All right, I should take advantage of this competition to become one of the top 10 inner disciples so that I won't have to challenge other people in the future. Yi Chen did not really care about the ranking in front of him. In the competition, everything was fair. You would not get any special treatment, just because you had a high ranking. But right now, the most important thing for him was training. The mid-condensing reality realm was too low. He had to at least reach the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm. Then, he would not have to be afraid of anyone among the inner disciples. At night, Yi-Chun sat down to cultivate. In the morning, Yi-Chun sat on the cliff, training his sword intent. At noon, Yi-Chun would go to the pool under the waterfall to train his body. As the days passed, it was getting closer and closer to June. Deep in the mountains behind the windy mountain, next to the rock mountain, a burly young man with a height of 2 meters and a naked upper body stood there. His eyes were like lightning, and his muscles were bulging. His terrifying aura was even stronger than a beast of the same level. Anyone who was stared at by him would feel as if they were facing an ancient beast, and they would tremble in fear. Roar! The muscular young man opened his mouth and roared. The muscles on his upper body shook like a mountain. His bones also made a sound like a bow being pulled, as if dozens of people were shooting arrows at the same time. The ground cracked under his stomp. The muscular young man opened his arms and slammed into the rock mountain. Rumble! The 20 meters tall, 6 to 7 meters thick rock mountain was broken into pieces. Huge rocks that were as tall as a human flew in all directions. His face did not even blush. The muscular young man mumbled to himself. The competition is about to start. I, Xiao Yi, will not be willing to be ranked below others. I will definitely fight for the first place. Once I become a #1 inner disciple, I will challenge Su Jing and see who is the strongest in the Sky Cloud Martial School. There were 36 mountains in the Sky Cloud Martial School, which were specially prepared for the inner masters to train. There were 36 mountains in the Sky Cloud Martial School. The white-robed elder said to the youth beside him, Li Yun, as soon as you were promoted to an inner disciple, you became my disciple. In these 3 years, you have never gone out to do any missions or participate in a ranking competition. You have been concentrating on your cultivation, but this time, you must participate in the ranking competition. Otherwise, the sect leader and the other elders will think that I am delaying you and not giving you enough opportunities to train. The young man's expression was grave and stern as he said, Master, don't worry. I will let others know that even if I have never been in Jianghu, I can still defeat other disciples. The white-robed elder shook his head. Don't look down on others. Although your strength is enough to be in the top 5 of the inner disciples, it is still a bit dangerous to fight for the top 3. As far as I know, Go Sword Li Kuang and Pei Shaoqing both have the strength to be in the top 3. As for that Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong, his fighting strength is so strong that even I, as an inner elder, am a bit surprised. I'm afraid you are still not his match. The cold-looking youth said, Master, didn't you tell me that if I want to fight, I should fight for first place? Otherwise, everything else is meaningless. That's what I've said. Then do your best to fight for the first place. If I'm not mistaken, your biggest opponent will be the Blood Shadow Blade, Meng Chong, and your second opponent will be the Go Sword, Li Kuang. His sword art is unpredictable, unlike the Sky Cloud Martial School. You must be careful when you meet him. Don't lose to him in sword art. In terms of sword art, I will not lose to anyone. The white-robed elder nodded. Not to mention other things, in terms of sword art, there were not many people in the Sky Cloud Martial School who could compete with his disciple. After all, after 3 years of hard work, the young man already had his own style of sword art. If he was given time, he might not lose to the #1 disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, Hidden Fragrance Sword Jumei. All right, 3 months of closed-door training. Let me see your current strength. Ding! The sword came out of the scabbard, and the cold-looking youth waved his sword towards the sea of clouds. Silently, 13 sword marks appeared in the sea of clouds. Each sword mark was the same length, and there was almost no difference between them. It was as if they were all copies of the same sword mark. The white-robed elder's eyes flashed with a surprised look. 14 sword lights. I can't believe that your sword light has reached the highest level. If someone was here, they would definitely be confused. There were 13 sword marks in the sea of clouds, Why were there 14 sword lights? Black Dragon River, Sunflower Water Tributary. In the last 3 months, a new small gang was established here, called the Sunflower Water Stronghold. The Sunflower Water Stronghold had 3 leaders, all of whom were at the peak of the condensing reality realm. Among them, the head leader had already touched the edge of the clasping Yuan realm, and would only need 1 or 2 months to become a clasping Yuan realm warrior. In addition, the Sunflower Water Stronghold also had 7 or 8 late condensing reality realm warriors, more than 20 mid-condensing reality realm warriors, and 40 to 50 early condensing reality realm warriors. As for the mortal realm warriors, they were basically cannon fodder, and there were also hundreds of them. The outer gate of the Sunflower Water Stronghold was split in half with a bang, and an arrogant and wild young man walked in with big steps. People of the Sunflower Water Stronghold, come out and die. Whoosh! There were at least 100 Stronghold members surrounding the young man, and then there were dozens of elite Stronghold members, all of whom were condensing reality realm warriors. Looking for death, you dare to accept the mission to destroy my Sunflower Water Stronghold. Kill him. With a command, the tall and sturdy young man was immediately drowned in the sea of people, and his figure could not be seen. Ha ha, all of you die. The blood-red blade light crisscrossed in the sea of people, and everywhere it went, there would be dozens of people's bodies cut open and blood splattered everywhere. There is simply no one who could withstand a single attack. No, not even a single attack, because even the condensing reality realm elite stronghold members could not block half of the power of the tall and sturdy young man's blade. How can he be so terrifying? Who is he? Ah, I know. He is the Sky Cloud Martial School's Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong. Run quickly. Someone saw something from the tall and sturdy young man's blade art, and his face was full of fear. Slaughter the common people, die for me. The tall and sturdy young man laughed arrogantly, and the murderous intent in his laughter soared into the sky. Soon after, a mournful and terrifying blood-red blade light flashed, and every time the blade fell, there would be at least 10 people dead, and the ground would be cut open with a hideous blade mark. Blood flowed like a river, and the people of the Sunflower Water Stronghold were almost all killed. At this moment, another 3 people rushed over. They were the 3 leaders of the Sunflower Water Stronghold. The third leader's weapon was a pair of Xian flower axes. The second leader's weapon was the eyebrow staff, and the head leader's weapon was a tiger-headed blade, which was the most powerful. The tall and sturdy young man rushed out from the corpses and slashed at the 3 people. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The 3 peak condensing reality realm warriors were instantly dismembered by this blade, and the blood-red blade light pierced through their bodies, and a huge gap appeared in the main hall of the Sunflower Water Stronghold. So weak, so boring. The tall and sturdy young man shook his head and turned to leave. The moon-white robe on his body was not stained with a trace of blood. Chapter 103. There was a huge rock in the pool under the waterfall. Yi Chun sat down with his legs crossed, with the hidden cloud sword and its sheath on his knees. He had entered into a mysterious and ethereal state. The rumbling sound of the waterfall did not affect Yi Chun at all. In his perception, the world was no longer the same. The sound had completely disappeared, and the waterfall was falling slower and slower. In the end, the waterfall even started to move slowly. From time to time, a few water droplets would fly out of the waterfall. Under the sunlight, the water droplets would shine with a colorful light like the brightest crystal. When he sensed that the waterfall had completely stopped, he opened his cold eyes. He pulled out his sword and waved it. All of his movements were done in one go, without any hesitation. Without a sound, the waterfall on the other side split into 2 and fell down in 2, unable to connect with each other. Boom! Boom! 2 loud booms came out, and the water splashed everywhere. I'm still half a step away from the sword intent. Unfortunately, this half step is the most difficult, and it will take a long time to train. Just now, Yi Chun had almost grasped the existence of the sword intent. Unfortunately, it was still a bit mysterious and could only be counted as the half-step sword intent. There was still a slight gap between it and the real sword intent. Huh. As he let out a breath, Yi Chun slowly stood up. His body shook slightly, and the half-step sword intent immediately disappeared, making it hard for others to notice. After enjoying the scenery for a while, Yi Chun went back the way he came. Outside the yard, Wu Zoming saw Yi Chun coming back. He smiled and said, "It's not easy to find you." Yi Chun said, "There are only 3 days left until the inner disciple ranking competition. I want to improve my strength as soon as possible." "You're not planning to become one of the top 10 inner disciples, are you?" "More or less." Wu Zoming's eyes widened. "Really?" "The top 10 inner disciples are almost as powerful as core disciples. Some of them are even qualified to become core disciples. Most importantly, almost all of them are at the late condensing reality realm, and they have the power to kill normal warriors at the same level as them." The top 10 inner disciples were the most elite group of the inner disciples. Each of them had a combination of talent, perception, and willpower. They might not be as good as the core disciples, but as long as they were given enough time, who knew how far they could go. So for the sect, the top 10 inner disciples and the core disciples were equally important, and they would not be ignored just because of a temporary gap in strength. Yi Chun shook his head and said with a smile, "When did you lose your ambition? Aren't you just one of the top 10 inner core disciples? I heard that every year a few people would be eliminated and new faces would appear." Wu Zoming opened his mouth, but couldn't say a word. He felt that he was indeed a bit lacking in ambition. When Yi Chun was still at Mortal Realm Stage 6, he dared to fight against Zhang Haoren, who was at the peak of Mortal Realm Stage 10. Now that he was already at the mid-condensing reality realm, why couldn't he replace the others and become one of the top 10 inner disciples? Not necessarily. You are right. I used to be the number 1 outer disciple, so I didn't feel too much pressure. But after I became an inner disciple, I was surrounded by the best of the best. With my talent and power, it was nothing at all. That's why I've been hiding my true thoughts and plan to move up step by step. I didn't have to be so aggressive. Now that you have said it, I finally understand why the gap between me and Zhang Haoren has been increasing. It is because I have lost my courage and determination and started to become an ordinary inner disciple. If Wu Zoming had not been with Yi Chun, he would not have realized this. But he had seen the changes in Yi Chun, and he felt that it was not a coincidence that Yi Chun could succeed, and it was worth thinking about. The joy of reaching the mid-condensing reality realm after taking the Zhenqi pellet had disappeared. Wu Zoming sighed. What a sudden awakening. I thought that the Zhenqi pellet would be able to shorten the gap between us. But now it seems that the gap is getting bigger and bigger. At least, I am not as determined as you. Yi Chun opened the door and invited him in. He said while walking, "Actually, talent is just like a stepping stone. It can give you a higher starting point than others. But if you want to keep improving, talent alone is not enough. You need to understand your own path and walk your own path." Wu Zoming forced a smile. "The path and the path are still too far for me. I really don't know what level you have reached." "All right, why did you want to see me?" Yi Chun asked. Wu Zoming patted his head. "I almost forgot. The ranking competition will be held in 3 days. We need to go and draw lots now." "Draw lots now?" "Yeah, except for the top 10 inner disciples. Everyone else has to draw lots and register their names. Otherwise, it would be troublesome to do it on the day of the competition." "That's true. Let's go together then." On the way, Yi Chun learned that the inner disciple ranking competition was divided into 10 groups, and each group had about 50 people. In each group, there would be one of the top 10 inner disciples, which was equivalent to a seeded contestant. The group competition would have 10 rounds, and the top 3 would have the right to go to the finals to compete for this year's top 10 inner disciple title. The others would be ranked according to the number of battles they had won. On the martial field, a big lottery box was placed there. There were 2 registrars next to it. Right now, there are already a lot of inner disciples drawing lots. Damn, so unlucky. How'd I end up in Ghost, Swordly Kwang's group? You call that unlucky? My group is Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong. Who can beat him? I have no choice but to give up if I meet him. Yi Chun was confused. He stood at the back of the line. Soon it was his turn. He reached his hand into the lottery box and took out a thin wooden card. On it was written, Group 7, number 28. Group seated contestant, Feng Ping. On the side, the registrar wrote down Yi Chen's name and the number of his group. After drawing lots, the two left the crowd. Wu Zoming asked, "Which group are you in? Who is the seated contestant?" Group 5. The seated contestant is Feng Ping. Flying Wind Feng Ping. Wu Zoming was dazed for a second and said, "He is ranked 6th among the top 10 inner disciples. His light body technique is ridiculously good. It is said that he can fly in the wind as if he is weightless. He is one of the more difficult ones to deal with. Luckily, it was not me. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be able to touch his clothes. Ridiculously good light body technique." Yi Chen was interested. To him, light body technique was also one of his advantages. He wondered how it would compare with Flying Wind Feng Ping. As for Wu Zoming, he was in Group 3. The seated contestant was called Xiao Yi. He was ranked 3rd among the top 10 inner disciples. He was even higher than Pei Shaoqing and Go Swordly Quang. He was a dual cultivator. His defense and attack were terrifyingly high. After leaving the martial field, the two went their separate ways. The third day, on the night before the ranking competition, Yi Chen had finally reached the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm. His Zhenqi was more than 30% stronger than before. At the same time, his pure Jun Zhenqi had also reached the peak of the 7th stage. His Qi swords were almost solid. They were even more powerful than the sword light. Now, everything was ready. He just had to wait for the ranking competition to start the next day. Chapter 104. Dong, dong, dong. Early in the morning, the sound of a bell came from the martial field of the Windy Mountain, wave after wave, spreading out for dozens of miles. On a mountain road, people from all over the world had gathered. Among these people, there were leaders of small martial institutions, leaders of big families, head guards of escort agencies, leaders of gangs, business leaders, city leaders of nearby cities, and some famous martial artists. "Leader Liu, you are here too." "Of course I am. The Sky Cloud Martial School is the biggest martial institution within tens of thousands of miles. Our small martial institutions cannot compete with them at all. So this time, I brought a few of my best disciples to watch the battles, hoping to inspire them. I also brought 2 young martial artists from a business to show them what true geniuses are, so they don't get into trouble everywhere." Same here. These people did not usually interact with each other, but they still knew each other. They walked together in groups of 3 to 5, talking and laughing. At this time, it was obvious who had more power and who was more powerful, because only the powerful ones could make others surround them, not the other way around. In the inner disciple area, Yi Chen casually closed the door of his courtyard and started to walk towards the noisy martial plaza. So many people. Arriving at the martial field, Yi Chen was a little surprised. Last year, because he was beaten by Wang Gang, he was bedridden for a month and missed the opportunity to watch the ranking competition. He had never seen such a spectacular scene of tens of thousands of people gathered in one place. There were 10 huge platforms in the martial field. Each of them was round and 3 meters tall, and combined with the other platforms to form a flower pattern, it was very beautiful. The 10 platforms were surrounded by a circle of VIP seats, and above the VIP seats were the audience seats. From afar, the entire martial field looked like an iron pot. The bottom of the iron pot was the battle site, and the 4 sides of the iron pot were the seats for the audience. Yi Chen, over here. In the open space between the platform and the VIP seats, a large group of inner disciples stood there. Wu Zoming waved at Yi Chen. With a gust of wind under his feet, he walked over. Wu Zoming was slightly excited as he said, "Group 3 and Group 7's platforms are one after the other. Let's just stay here. But I'm a little nervous now. Look, the people in the VIP seats are all important people. Even your father is here." Yi Chen followed his gaze and saw his father, Yi Tianhao, and his mother, Shun Yuqing, in the VIP seats. Yi Tianhao and Shun Yuqing smiled at Yi Chen. Their eyes were filled with expectation and pride. They had never thought that Yi Chen would be able to join the Sky Cloud Martial School's inner disciple ranking competition. Even if he could join, he would be at the bottom. But now it was different. They already knew that Yi Chun had reached the mid-condensing reality realm, plus his talent in martial arts. He should be able to get into the top 200. Yi Chun gave them a reassuring look before withdrawing his gaze. At this time, the inner court disciples were basically all here, only the top 10 inner court disciples were still missing. Suddenly, the outer sect disciples and the spectator stands burst into cheers that soared to the sky. The top 10 inner disciples are here. The one in the middle should be Blood Shadow Blade, Brother Meng Chong, right? Next to Brother Meng Chong is Iron Fan Brother Yi Qing, Brother Xiao Yi, Sister Zhou Ruo, and Brother Pei Xiaoqing. So powerful. Just like the others, the inner disciples who had arrived earlier all looked at the 10 people at the wide entrance. These 10 people were the top 10 inner disciples. Some of them were arrogant and overflowing with killing intent. Some of them were 2 meters tall and looked like ancient demonic beasts. Some of them had a smile on their faces and looked calm. Some of them had a face like a peach blossom and had a lithe body. Some of them were expressionless and had cold eyes. As the 10 of them walked together, an indistinct, earth-shaking aura spread out, attracting the attention of the important figures in the VIP seats. So powerful, just the aura alone is enough to overwhelm people. Wu Zoming gasped. Yi Chun smiled faintly. He didn't feel anything. He looked around and found that most of the people had lost their confidence and unnaturally looked away. Of course, there were also a small number of people who had excited expressions in their eyes. As long as he could beat them, they would be able to become the top 10 inner disciples. What was the purpose of a man's life? Wasn't it just for pride? Who did not want to be powerful and be admired by others? And the top 10 inner disciples were the best starting point. Because the platforms were in different directions, the top 10 inner disciples all spread out. On Yi Chen's side, there was Flying in the Wind Feng Ping, Madman Xiao Yi, and also Zhou Ruo, who was also one of the top 10 inner disciples. There was a total of 3 people. They were 3 steps away from each other, not too far away, but not too close either. I don't think there are any powerful inner disciples on our side. Feng Ping looked around and said to Xiao Yi and Zhou Ruo. Xiao Ye's long hair was draped over his shoulders. He looked extremely wild. They are still too young. In the past 5 years, the most unpopular one was only 3 disciples who got kicked out of the ranking. Normally, it would be good if 2 disciples got kicked out. Feng Ping looked away from Yi Chun and the others. He did not pay too much attention to them. After all, without reaching the late condensing reality realm, there was basically no way one could get into the top 10. In the past 5 years, there was only one core disciple, Su Jing, that freak. Even the hidden fragrance sword, Zhu Mei, got the title of top 10 inner disciples when she was only at the late condensing reality realm, and then became a core disciple. Zhou Ruo, whose face was like a peach blossom, said lightly, "Don't be too careless. You might fail miserably. The Sky Cloud Martial School might have a second sister Su Jing." Wu Zoming said to Yi Chun in a low voice, "You didn't see the ranking competition 2 years ago. Sister Su Jing won all the battles with her mid-condensing reality realm cultivation and became the top 10 inner disciples. When she becomes a core disciple, then Brother Meng Chong, the Blood Shadow Blade, will have the chance to be the top 10 inner disciples." Yi Chun nodded. He had never seen the full extent of Su Jing's power. Even in the Northwest Plain, she did not use all of her power. It was hard to imagine how powerful she really was. The top 10 inner disciples were not easy to deal with. Each of them had the power to kill warriors at the same level as them within seconds. It would be very difficult, almost impossible, to beat them. Wu Zoming changed his tone and said, "But Brother Meng Chong, the Blood Shadow Blade, was not that powerful the year before. It was only last year that he started to show his power and no one could stop him." Some people said that he was already in the top 10 of the core disciples, and only after the ranking competition he would be able to challenge the core disciples. While the two were talking, the head elder of the Sky Cloud Martial School flew onto the platform in the center. Clearing his throat, the head elder raised his voice and said, "Everyone, welcome to the annual Sky Cloud Martial School's Inner Disciple Ranking Competition. This year's ranking competition is the same as the previous years. There will be 10 groups, and each group will have a seeded contestant with a number of 0. They will participate in the group competition after 5 rounds, and all the previous rounds will be considered as wins. The competition will be done by drawing lots randomly. The 2 people whose numbers are drawn will have to fight on the platform to determine the winner. Also, the competition will be based on a point system. You will get 2 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and 0 for a loss. The top 3 in the group will have the right to compete in the finals for the top 10 inner disciples. Let's cut to the chase. The ranking competition officially begins. As soon as the head elder finished speaking, the entire martial field became noisy again, and the sound waves reached the sky. Nodding with satisfaction, the head elder flashed back to the sky Cloud Martial School's elder seats. Next to the platform, the deacons had already started to draw lots. The first group, number 3 against number 9. The second group, number 5 against number 23. The third group, hearing the head elder, all the inner disciples walked onto their respective platforms and started to fight with their opponents. Chapter 105. Coincidentally, Wu Zoming's opponent in the first battle of Group 3 was also at the mid-condensing reality realm, just like him. Burning Fist. On the stage, Wu Zoming yelled. He jumped up and threw a punch at his opponent. Boom! Hot sparks flew everywhere. The inner disciple was pushed back a couple of steps. After gaining the upper hand with only one move, Wu Zoming did not stop there. He performed his top-rank Mortal Realm skill, Flame Desolate Fist, to its limit. Dozens of fiery fist shadows spread out like a peacock's tail, causing his opponent to have no chance to fight back. After getting off the stage, Wu Zoming said casually, "Not bad. The first opponent is not that strong. It's only the first round. Don't show too much of your power." Yichen reminded his opponent. "I know, don't worry. A battle would usually end in the time it takes for a fifth of an incense stick to burn. Rarely would 2 people be at the same level, and it would be hard to tell who would win. Some groups' battles ended quickly, and the second battle of the first round had already started. Group 7, number 8 against number 28. Wu Zoming said, "Yichen, it's your turn." "Yeah." Yichen nodded and jumped onto the stage of Group 7. Peak of the mid-condensing reality realm. My luck is not bad. Yichen's opponent was a teenager with straight eyebrows. He was holding a huge ring blade. The blade was surrounded by a yellow chi flow. It looked extremely heavy. Yichen was speechless. His opponent was also at the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm. Why was he so lucky? Lose. The teenager with straight eyebrows suddenly rushed forward. The hard rock under his feet suddenly cracked. The huge ringed blade in his hands drew a thick arc in the air, directly attacking towards Yichen. Yichen shook his head. He casually waved his right hand. His whole arm was so fast that it left no shadow. It easily knocked away his opponent's huge ring blade. His opponent thought that the blade was in his hand. He was about to attack again. Who? The 2 were 5 steps away from each other. The teenager with straight eyebrows did not have a blade. He said in frustration, "Where is my blade?" Yichen pointed to his left. The teenager with straight eyebrows looked over. His huge ring blade was stuck on the edge of the stage. It was shaking. He did not have the face to stay on the stage anymore. He pulled out his blade and jumped off the stage with a red face. He hated Yichen to death. He made him lose face like this. Unsurprisingly, Yichen won 1 battle. He got 2 points. Then came the second round, the third round, and all the way to the 5th round, where Yichen easily defeated his opponents without much effort. His score had reached 10 points. Wu Zoming lost 1 battle in the 4th round. He got 8 points. On the other side, Zhang Haoren was in the 10th group. He had broken through to the mid-condensing reality realm a while ago, and he had also won 5 battles in a row, gaining 10 points. On the other hand, Huang Bingwen, who had battled with Yichen before, seemed to have improved. He had only lost 1 out of the 5 battles, and had accumulated 8 points, just like Wu Zoming. After the 5 rounds of competition had ended, the Great Elder announced a half-an-hour break, allowing everyone to recover their true chi and physical strength. On the eastern side of the VIP seats, Yi Tianhao smiled at Shun Yuqing and said, Chun is doing well. He actually won 5 matches in a row, and it looks like he's having it easy. Shin Yuqing was also very happy. He said, "We were worried for nothing. In the past 6 months, Chun progress is extraordinary. There's hope for him to enter the top 100. Indeed, let's wait and see." The half-hour break was over, and the competition continued. Unlike the first 5 rounds, the last 5 rounds would have seeded players joining the fray. If you didn't meet them, you could count yourself lucky, but if you did, you could only brace yourself and fight. This time, Wu Zoming was really unlucky. Although he did not run into any seeded contestants, he ran into an inner disciple who was at the late condensing reality realm. After a dozen attacks, he was defeated. Zhang Haoran continued his winning streak, accumulating 12 points. Huang Bingwen lost 1 match, but he still had 8 points. The 7th battle of the 6th round, it was Yi Chen's turn again. "Hee, little brat, your winning streak ends here." The one who spoke was a young man with squinted eyes. He was about 17 or 18 years old, which was a bit older than most of the inner disciples. He had accumulated a lot of battle experience over the years, and could usually be ranked around 100. Shoo! This time, Yi Chen took the initiative to attack. He performed his crane shadow steps and disappeared from his opponent's sight. When he saw Yi Chen again, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. The strong fist power had pushed him off the ground and out of the stage. He fell heavily on the ground. The squinted young man could not believe what he had just seen. How is this possible? He defeated me with only 1 attack? How powerful is he? Feng Ping, this disciple is not simple. It seems like he has been hiding his true power. Zhou Ruo glanced at Yi Chen and said to Feng Ping. Feng Ping shook his head and laughed. Compared to the other inner disciples, he is indeed a lot more powerful. But against me, he can only lose. Xiao Yi grinned. Although he is not your opponent, he still has a chance to enter the top 3 in the group. After another round, it was the 9th round. Number 0 versus number 24. It's your turn. Xiao Yi crossed his arms in front of his chest and said, "Whoosh!" A light wind swept across, and Feng Ping's shadow was blown away. When he looked again, he was already on the stage. Such a fast technique. When did he get on the stage? He is indeed the flying in the wind Feng Ping. His movement is almost like the wind, invisible and formless. All the inner disciples looked at each other. Yi Chen frowned. Although Feng Ping's speed was unbelievably fast, what was really scary was that he could blend in with the wind. Once he combined the two, his Qin Gong would have a qualitative improvement, and it would give people an illusion that they could not understand. Of course, that did not include him. "Brother Feng, my name is Gao Yang. Nice to meet you." The square-faced young man knew the difference in power between them, so he said respectfully. Feng Ping nodded. "Bring it on. I will not go too far." Hearing him, the square-faced young man's face turned serious. He took out his sword from the scabbard and swung it in the air towards Feng Ping. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The sword vibrated in the air, and 4 sword shadows appeared. Each sword shadow was extremely sharp, and they cut the air into pieces. Seeing that the tip of the sword was about to hit Feng Ping, the square-faced young man's face flashed with joy. At this moment, Feng Ping moved, his body leaned back, and kept the same distance from the tip of the sword as he floated backwards. How is this possible? My sword speed is not as fast as his movement technique. After chasing for more than 10 steps, the square-faced young man still could not hit his opponent, and his expression changed drastically. Feng Ping was not interested in playing with his opponent anymore, so he flicked his finger on the tip of the sword. Chin! With a light flick, the square-faced young man could barely hold the sword in his hand. The sword light that he had just condensed was instantly shattered, and his plan to attack through the air had failed. Immediately after, he was kicked in the chest, and blood came out from the corner of his mouth as he flew backwards. Brother Feng is too powerful. Feng Yin has been winning all this time, but he was still defeated so easily. Just how powerful are the top 10 inner disciples? Very powerful. Brother Feng did not even use his full strength. Looks like no one in our group can beat Brother Feng. That number 28 Yi Chen is definitely not Brother Feng's opponent. Chapter 106. Below the stage, Wu Zhongming turned his head and said to Yi Chun, Yi Chun, you have to be careful if you run into senior brother Feng. His Qigong is more than that. I know, don't worry. Among the people present, Yi Chun could see it more clearly than anyone else. However, in terms of Qigong, he really did not need to be afraid of the other party. In the 7th round, Wu Zhongming, Zhang Haoren, and Huang Bingwen all lost. Wu Zhongming and Huang Bingwen lost because their strength was limited, so they naturally lost when encountering a strong opponent, while Zhang Haoren lost because he encountered one of the top 10 inner disciples, Ghost Sword Li Kuang. Ghost Sword Li Kuang was indeed worthy of the title of Ghost Sword. With just one sword move, Zhang Haoren was defeated. Seriously speaking, the difference in strength between the two wasn't that big. After all, Zhang Haoren was one of the top geniuses in the entire Sky Cloud Martial School, so it was impossible for him to be defeated in one move. However, he could only blame his bad luck. Ghost Sword Li Kuang's sword art was famous for its unpredictability. As long as one's strength was slightly weaker, it would be very difficult for them to withstand even one move. That sword was like a nightmare. There was no way to block it. Zhang Haoren, who had lost a match, stared at Ghost Sword Li Kuang. He couldn't believe that he couldn't even block a single sword. Ghost Sword Li Kuang turned around and said as he walked down the stage, "One more year." Under the core disciples, senior brother Li Kuang is the #1 swordsman. Now that I think about it, I feel that the sword was too terrifying. My eyes couldn't keep up, my senses couldn't keep up, and even my intuition couldn't keep up. It was clearly very fast, but gave people the illusion that it was very slow. If it were me, I would probably go crazy immediately. Senior brother Li Kuang is powerful, but look over there. An inner disciple pointed at a platform where 2 people were fighting. The others discussed among themselves. It's one of the top 10 inner disciples, ranked 9th, dual spear Dong Haohua, senior brother Dong. Who is his opponent? I've never seen him before. Me too. He seems to have appeared out of nowhere. Is there such a person among the inner disciples? On a platform, the cold young man was expressionless. He placed his right hand on the hilt of his sword, pulled it out, and slashed. Chi! 6 sword lights floated over and covered Dong Haohua's entire body. Dong Haohua smiled confidently. He brandished the 2 spears that were 5 feet long. The spear's shadows that filled the air easily shattered the sword light and rushed towards his opponent. Suddenly, Dong Haohua stood rooted to the ground. He lowered his head and saw that the clothes on his chest had been torn open, and a faint trace of blood was seeping out. I lost. What's your name? Dong Haohua knew that if his opponent hadn't been merciful, this sword would have taken his life. However, he didn't understand. He had clearly destroyed 6 sword shadows, so how could he still be hit? It was like seeing a ghost. Li Yun. With these 2 words, the cold-looking youth walked down the stage. He defeated senior brother Dong Haohua, who is ranked 9th, with 1 sword strike. This is unbelievable. When did such a terrifying figure appear among the inner sect disciples? Even senior brother Dong was defeated in 1 move. This Li Yun should be able to compete with senior brother Li Kuang. I wonder whose sword art is better. Not far away, Ghost Sword Li Kuang squinted his eyes and stared at Li Yun's back. Finally, one of the top 10 inner disciples had been defeated. A lot of people who were not powerful enough did not have much hope for themselves, but they hoped to see a second or even a third. Before the first wave had even subsided, another wave had risen. On the 8th platform, another person had defeated the 10th ranked inner disciple, Iron Leg Song Fei. Although Song Fei was only ranked 10th, that was because his fighting style was too tough. If he fought head-on, his ranking would still be higher. On the other hand, Song Fei's opponent also specialized in leg techniques. He only threw out 3 kicks. The first kick scattered Song Fei's leg shadows. The second kick shattered Song Fei's protective Jinqi, and the third kick landed lightly on Song Fei's chest, leaving a footprint. Song Fei's kick was so light that it seemed natural. If it was just that, it would not have caused such a sensation. The inner disciple who had defeated Song Fei was called Typhone. He was 19 years old this year, and he was one of the oldest disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School. Everyone knew that he was hardworking, but his talent was average. However, after watching his battle this time, he gave people the feeling that he was a master. It was as if he had changed from a moth to a butterfly. This kid is a late bloomer. On the elder seats, an elder sighed. A few elders on the side nodded. Diligence can make up for one's lack of talent. Moreover, when he is extremely diligent, he will be able to understand many things that others cannot. This kid needs to be trained. It is not that I have never seen late bloomers before, but this time it is more shocking than any of the previous ones. It is like he has been reborn. Wu Zoming asked Yi Chun, "Yi Chun, what did you see? Why do I feel that those 3 kicks were ordinary, but the strange thing is that senior brother Song, Fei, could not block them?" Yi Chun slowly let out a breath. "That is power." "Power?" Wu Zoming did not understand. Yi Chun explained, "The so-called power is very mysterious, and words cannot describe it. To put it simply, he has understood the power of nature and has integrated this power into his kick art. Therefore, although it looks ordinary, it is unstoppable. After all, in front of the power of nature, human strength is too small." Wu Zoming did not really understand. As the competition went on, the higher the score, the lower the score. So far, Yi Chun had 18 points, tied with Feng Zhongfei and Feng Ping for first place. Finally, it was the last round of the competition, the 10th round. The first round, number 0 against number 28. As soon as the deacon finished speaking, the inner disciples on Yi Chun's side became excited. In the previous 9 rounds, they could already see that Yi Chun was very powerful. After all, in the 10 groups, there were very few people who could win 9 rounds in a row. Besides the 8 seeded contestants, there were only a few others who could do so. Originally, if Yi Chun did not run into Feng Ping, he might be able to win 10 rounds in a row and tie with Feng Ping for first place. But now it was probably impossible. Under everyone's disbelief, Yi Chun walked onto the stage. On the other side, Feng Ping said casually, "You are not bad. You're not bad either." What Yi Chun said shocked everyone else. Brother Feng Ping's power is only not bad. Are you kidding me? You can't be so arrogant. Being too arrogant is not good. Let me test your bottom line. Feng Ping recognized Yi Chun's power, but he did not think that Yi Chun could beat him. His body flashed, and he disappeared as if he had merged with the wind. Yi Chun did not change his expression. He waved his fist to the left, and the fist power and finger power clashed together, making a horrifying explosion sound. However, after that, Feng Ping's attacks became even fiercer. Finger power after finger power shrouded Yi Chun from all directions, and he still did not show himself. In terms of movement techniques, I have never been afraid of anyone. As he spoke, Yi Chun's body disappeared as well. Finger power after finger power turned the stage into a hornet's nest. Pa bang chi. On the stage, only fist shadows and finger power could be seen fighting. Because the two's bodies were too fast, and because it was too strange, only a trace of shadow could be seen. This is too fucking strange. How can we watch this? I did not expect this Yi Chun to be so powerful. He was obviously hiding his power before. Someone could not help but say, Brother Feng Ping did not use his real power, right? Chapter 107. Feng Ping did not hear the discussions below the stage. He was completely shocked. Among the inner disciples, there was actually someone who did not lose to him in terms of Qigong. It's urgent. Feng Ping pointed out with his finger. The air was filled with finger light. The finger light tore through the air, and the sound was endless. Puff, 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 puff. Yi Chun's body was instantly pierced through and scattered. It turned out that it was just an afterimage. Your Qigong is just SOSO. Yi Chun's voice came from behind Feng Ping. Feng Ping was furious. His body was like a tornado, spinning violently. Countless finger light beams shot out in all directions. Some of them even pierced through the stone pillars at the edge of the stage. Yi Chun's eyes were sharp, his body flashed, shuttling through the countless finger light beams. They were not shot at the same time. There were always some in front and some behind, some fast and some slow. With his powerful body control and speed, Yi Chun was able to sneak in and out of Feng Ping's space. He managed to get within 5 steps of Feng Ping. How is this possible? How can we not hit him like this? Including Xiao Yi and Zhou Ruo. All the inner disciples below the stage were stunned. Their mouths were slightly open. Those with good eyesight knew that it was impossible to dodge all the finger light beams with just speed. After all, the difference between each finger light beam was very small, so small that it could be ignored. Plus, these finger light beams were not arranged in any order. There was no way to find a pattern. In order to pass through them, one's eyesight, heart power, stamina, speed, reflexes, and the ability to see the big picture all had to be a high level. On the elders' seats, the head elder had a smile on his face. This disciple is not bad. There are not many people who can beat Feng Ping and Qin Gong. The second elder nodded. Feng Ping's movement skill is not to be underestimated, but he is still not as experienced as his opponent. He is also not as skilled. Haha, there are 3 disciples with potential. Is our Sky Cloud Martial School's fortune. The third elder could not help but laugh out loud. On the stage, Yi Chun threw out a punch, blowing away Feng Ping without hesitation. Yi Chun wins. The deacon who drew the lots was startled. He shouted out loud. Yi Chun was not too pleased with himself. His body slid, and he instantly landed beside Wu Zongming. Wu Zongming's blood was boiling as he watched. He said excitedly, "That's great. Even senior brother Feng Ping's Qin Gong can't match up to yours." He is still unable to comprehend the true essence of the wind. He only has the speed of the wind. Wind was formless and formless. If Feng Ping could comprehend it, Yi Chen's Qin Gong would naturally not be able to catch up to him. Feng Ping walked down the stage in a daze. Losing to someone else in Qin Gong was a huge blow to him. After all, he was full of confidence earlier and thought that he could easily defeat Yi Chun. The 10th round of the competition ended. The deacon who drew lots reported the score. Group 7. First place Yi Chun, 20 points. Second place Feng Ping, 18 points. Third place. The top 3 teams in the group stage would qualify for the finals. Feng Ping was not eliminated. Soon, the top 3 of the other groups were also announced. Wu Zongming lost too many matches and was disqualified from the finals. Zhang Haoren only lost 1 match and was ranked 2nd. As for Li Yun and Tai Feng, they were both ranked 1st in their groups. No matter how exciting the competition was, they still needed to eat. It was already noon. The first elder stood up and announced that the finals would begin in the afternoon, in the Sky Cloud Martial School's Inner Disciples cafeteria. I can't believe there are 3 powerful inner disciples this year. Li Yun, Tai Feng, and Yi Chun. Li Yun's sword art is too powerful. I still can't figure out how he defeated senior brother Dong Haoa. Tai Feng is not bad either. He defeated senior brother Song Fei with just 3 kicks, steady as a mountain. What do you guys think other than his Qin Gong? What do you think about Yi Chun? Maybe his Qin Gong is good, but to beat him, one must be in the top 6 of the top 10 inner disciples. Yeah, no matter how good his Qin Gong is, if he does not have enough attack power, he will not be able to defeat senior brother Li Kuang and the others. Yeah, other than Feng Ping, Dong Haohua, and Song Fei, the other 7 haven't revealed their full strength. They haven't even revealed 70% of their strength. It'll be very difficult to win against them. We can't be too weak in every aspect. Don't say anymore. I will be so excited that I can't eat anymore. I really want to see the finals. At that time, the top 10 inner disciples will definitely go all out. It will be the peak of the inner disciples. In the afternoon, the martial arts plaza was boiling again. It was several times more lively than in the morning. On the central platform, the first elder raised his voice and said, "The finals will be divided into the elimination round and the ranking round. The elimination round will eliminate 20 people, leaving only 10, and the ranking round will decide the ranking of this year's top 10 inner disciples." Below, Yi Chen heard it clearly. The elimination round had a total of 10 rounds, divided into 3 platforms, but each platform did not have a fixed number of people. In other words, whoever was drawn would go up, and it was possible to choose which platform to go up. After the 10 rounds, the top 10 disciples would become this year's top 10 inner disciples. After becoming one of the top 10 inner disciples, there was still the ranking round, which was the most complicated. It needed a lot of rounds, so let's not talk about it for now. Now, the finals officially begin. The first elder gathered his zhenqi and raised his voice. Boom! The spectators' stands were filled with cheers. Everyone was supporting the inner disciple they liked. The first platform, Song Fei against Jiang Hao. The second platform, Li Yun against Wu Yuan. The third platform, Meng Chong against Feng Ping. There was no suspense in the battles between the first and second platform, but the third platform was more interesting. After all, this was the battle between the top 10 inner disciples. It immediately caused a tsunami of cheers. 6 people went up on the platform. Unsurprisingly, Song Fei and Li Yun easily defeated their opponents and got 2 points. The battle on the third platform had not yet started. Feng Ping looked at Meng Chong seriously. As one of the top 10 inner disciples, there were 2 people he did not want to meet the most. One was the ghost sword Li Kuang, and the other was the blood shadow blade Meng Chong. The ghost sword Li Kuang sword art was unpredictable. It was impossible to defend against. If one's strength was slightly weaker, there was almost no way they could pose a threat to him. But Meng Chong was even more terrifying. He had an overwhelming advantage in all aspects. It was almost impossible to meet him. However, Feng Ping still wanted to walk past Meng Chong's blade. No matter what, he was still one of the top 10 inner disciples. If he was defeated by someone with one blade, he would lose face. Meng Chong grinned and said, Feng Ping, are you thinking about how to walk past my blade? Give up on that idea. Your strength is too far away from mine. Meng Chong walked towards Feng Ping step by step. His right hand was placed on the blade's hilt. Dodge! Feng Ping's scalp went numb. He quickly dashed to the side. His body instantly disappeared. You can't escape. Almost no one saw how Meng Chong used his blade. They only saw the blood-red blade light flash past. The next moment, Feng Ping's figure appeared. There was a long and narrow blade mark on his chest, extending all the way to his waist. Huh! After laughing a few times, Meng Chong turned around and walked down the platform. Chapter 108. So powerful, so powerful. Even Brother Feng Ping could not take one attack from him. Although senior Brother Feng Ping lost to Yi Chun, his movement art is still one of the best among the inner disciples. But he couldn't even dodge a single blade attack from senior Brother Meng Chong. The gap between them is huge. This year, Brother Meng Chong is even more powerful than last year. Hearing the discussions from the crowd, Yi Chun frowned slightly. The blood shadow blade Meng Chong was indeed very powerful. His blade art was very simple. It was fast, accurate, and brutal. There was nothing fancy about it. But in his hands, it was able to bring out the power that even gods and ghosts would have to run away from. When fighting against him, if one's technique was not at a certain level, one should not try to use techniques. Otherwise, one would die a horrible death. The second Meng Chong got off the stage. The top 10 inner disciples all looked at him with fear. The skinny iron fan, I Ching, forced a smile. I thought I could catch up with him this year, but it seems like I've been left behind. Next to him, Song Fei was surprised. I Ching, you were ranked second last year? What's the point of being ranked second? The gap is too big. He has already reached the top of the core disciples. Top of the core disciples. Song Fei gasped. He knew very well how powerful the top-ranked core disciples were. Although they were all at the late condensing reality realm, or even the peak of the late condensing reality realm, the slightly more powerful core disciples could easily beat him with only one attack. Not to mention the top-ranked core disciples, they were the top of the top-ranked core disciples. The fourth battle was Yi Chen's turn. His opponent was called Yang Lai. Once he got on the stage, Yang Lai backed off as far as he could. He wanted to increase the distance between him and Yi Chun. He was afraid that Yi Chun would suddenly disappear in front of him. Yi Chun shook his head and forced a smile. He stood still. When he was 30 steps away, Yang Lai stopped backing off. He held his long blade with both of his hands and threw out 3 blade lights towards Yi Chen's position. Yi Chen moved his body slightly and skillfully dodged the blade lights. He stomped his feet on the ground and released his hidden power. Explode. Boom! The stage under Yang Lai's feet exploded. His body was thrown high into the air and fell off the stage. This was out of everyone's expectations. They had thought that Yi Chun would defeat his opponent with speed. They hadn't expected this to happen. The fifth match was against Zhang Haoran. Although he lost to Ghost Sword Li Kuang, his strength was still very strong. In less than 10 moves, he defeated his opponent and gained 2 points. There was no suspense in the 6th, 7th, and 8th matches. It was just pure abuse, not interesting at all. The 9th battle, Pei Xiaoqing versus Tai Feng. Buzz. As soon as the lot-drawing deacon's voice fell, the crowd finally boiled over. Pei Xiaoqing was ranked above Ghost Sword Li Kuang in the previous tournament. He had a friendly attitude and seemed to be easy to get along with. Only those who knew him knew that he was like a demon when he made a move. Even Li Kuang was afraid of this friend of his. Tai Feng was the representative of late bloomers. He had defeated Song Fei, who was famous for his leg techniques, in 3 kicks. He had the demeanor of a master and was as steady as a mountain. The two of them could be said to be at loggerheads. If they didn't fight, it would be hard to tell who was stronger and who was weaker. Tai Feng, you have to show mercy later, Pei Xiaoqing said with a smile. Tai Feng replied honestly. Okay. Nobody knew why, but when they saw Tai Feng's expression, everyone wanted to laugh, a knowing smile. This person was not hateful at all. They only admired him, admired his hard work, admired his perseverance, and even more admired his simple and honest, grandmaster-like bearing. Hearing this, Pei Xiaoqing's smile disappeared and his heart tightened. His intuition told him that Tai Feng was not easy to deal with. If he wanted to win, he would have to use 120% of his strength. Unknowingly, Pei Xiaoqing's palms had turned purple like a demon. He shouted loudly and pounced towards Tai Feng with a palm strike. Woo 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 woo. The air was torn apart, emitting a mournful sound. Some of the nearby inner disciples' faces turned pale with fright. Tai Feng's expression was still simple, but when he moved, everyone knew that he was not easy to deal with. The pressure from the aura had no effect on him at all. His body slightly tilted and his right leg raised. With just 2 simple movements, Tai Feng's aura changed. A powerful aura gathered and integrated into his body. Break! With a single kick, Pei Xiaoqing's palm power was disintegrated. The huge impact forced him to stop his momentum. However, as one of the top 10 inner disciples in the last inner disciple competition, Pei Xiaoqing naturally still had energy to spare. His body circled around Tai Feng and suddenly launched a second wave of attack. Demons appear all over the mountains and plains. Woo woo woo. Roar, roar, roar. The purple and cyan palm wind was like a dark cloud, covering the sky and covering the earth as it moved towards Tai Feng. If it was someone else, they would have broken their mind before the fight even started. This time Tai Feng is in danger. Brother Pei Xiaoqing is not Song Fei after all. How could he be so easy to deal with? I wonder how many moves Tai Feng can take. Yichen had a different opinion from the others. After Tai Feng's first kick, his aura had already gathered, and the one in danger was Pei Xiaoqing. Just as expected, facing the sky, full of cyan palm wind, Tai Feng put his tongue under his chin and let out a loud shout. His shout was like thunder, causing the air to ripple like water. One kick moves the wind and clouds, sweeping the world. Standing in the middle of the platform, Tai Feng's aura was limitless as he kicked out. This kick caused a strong wind to descend on the martial arts plaza. Accompanied by the majestic power of the kick, it went towards the cyan palm wind. Pop! Pop! The sound of thunder came out. The whole platform was in chaos. People could not look directly at it. The next moment, a figure was sent flying backward, spurting out a large mouthful of blood in the air. It was Pei Xiaoqing. Unbelievable. Tai Feng won. How many kicks did Tai Feng use? Did you guys see it? It looks like it has 5 legs, but also 9 legs. Why did I only see the shadows of his kicks? Yichen smiled lightly. This Tai Feng was very powerful, and there were not many people who could beat him. Judging from the current situation, only the Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong had the power to suppress him. But of course, in a battle between warriors, anything could happen, and the more powerful one might not necessarily win. The elders in the elders' seating area looked at each other and smiled. The late bloomer Tai Feng was even more outstanding than they had imagined. That move just now was simply too brilliant. The wind stopped, and Typhoon, who was on the platform, smiled and walked down the platform. Everyone could only feel speechless towards this, and they wondered if he was really simple and honest or if he was pretending to be. Then, the competition continued. There were no strong fights like before. The next few matches were all won by overwhelming margins, without any suspense. However, in the last match of the first round, I Ching, the Iron Fan, made everyone happy. He waved his fan, and countless shadows of his fan danced like dancing butterflies. His opponent did not dare to fight anymore and immediately surrendered. Chapter 109. The second round of the competition was a bit speechless. Out of the 15 battles, 11 of them ended very quickly. Almost all of them were the top-ranked disciples beating the bottom-ranked disciples. Yi Chen's battle was not included in these 11 battles, but it was not that far off. His opponent was Dong Haohua, who was not weak at all. Unfortunately, it was Yi Chun who had beaten him within 3 to 4 attacks before he had even shown his real power. There were 2 exciting battles in the third round. The first was a duel between the only 2 female disciples among the top 10 inner disciples of the previous term. The other was Xiao Yi against Li Yun. The 2 female disciples were Peach Hand Zhou Ruo and Rainbow Sword Qiu Ruodong. Zhou Ruo was ranked 4th. She was very strong. Her slender hands looked like they had no bones, but after being touched by her, Qiu Ruodong, who was ranked 8th, immediately vomited blood and retreated, losing the battle. Xiao Yi and Li Yun's battle was too intense. One of them was ranked 3rd among the top 10 inner disciples last time. The other one was a new rising star. Both of them did not give in to each other. They were fighting fiercely. Even the platform was almost destroyed by them. Xiao Yi's defense and attacking power were very scary. Normal sword light could not break through his Zhenqi protection. One punch could explode the air in front of him, making Li Yun unable to get close to him. As for Li Yun, although he was a new rising star, he was not any weaker than Xiao Yi. He was evenly matched with the third-ranked Xiao Yi. His sword light splitting martial technique was perfect. The hidden sword light made Xiao Yi even more scared. In the end, the head elder thought that it was too long, so he called it a draw. There were also exciting battles in the 4th and 5th round. The outer disciples who were watching were very excited. Their blood was boiling. The 6th round, the third battle. Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong against Iron Fan I Ching. Last year's 1st and 2nd ranked disciples are finally fighting. I wonder who is stronger. You idiot. It must be senior brother Meng Chong. The battle has not even started. How do you know? Senior brother I Ching's fan art is so amazing. How could he lose? The one who supported I Ching was a female inner disciple. The people beside her rolled their eyes, thinking, another love-struck fool? On the stage, I Ching opened his iron fan and smiled at Meng Chong. Last year when I fought with you, I was able to last more than 10 rounds. I'm afraid I won't be able to last this year. Meng Chong said, there is no need to belittle yourself. Do you think that I will let down my guard against you? Hee. I Ching laughed. Come on, I know you definitely have some ultimate moves, and there's an 80% chance you're going to use them against me. Meng Chong still had his eyes on I Ching. His opponent had already fused his techniques in actual combat to perfection. He looked beautiful, but not flashy. It would be impossible to defeat him with a single slash. Step by step, Meng Chong walked toward I Ching. Just as he was about to take his 10th step, I Ching moved. In fact, he had no choice but to move. Otherwise, once his opponent found the most suitable place to attack, there would be no room for him to turn things around. The iron fan fluttered up and down, creating a series of illusory fan shadows that flew towards Meng Chong without any pattern. It was as if a large bag filled with butterflies had been accidentally opened, and all the butterflies had flown out. Break! Meng Chong lowered his body and charged forward, slashing down with his saber. Puchi! This saber strike grabbed the weakest point of the countless fan shadows, breaking through them. The blood-red saber gleam easily slashed towards I Ching at an unbelievable speed. This is what a fast saber should be like. Once it moves, it's amazing. I wonder what level that North Snow Quicksaber Lynch has reached. Seeing Meng Chong's saber art, I Ching couldn't help but think of Lynch, who he had met in the Northwest auction house. Both of them were famous for their fast saber arts. If Meng Chong was already this powerful, then that Lynch would be even more powerful. Shaking his head, Yi Chen knew that he had to work harder. Above Lynch, there were still young Master North Snow and young Master Duanmu, and above him, there was the top young warrior of the Windy Nation, young Master Emerald. Clang! The blood-red saber light was blocked by the iron fan. I Ching's body was knocked back by the impact. Good. Since you could take my first saber attack, you can definitely take my second and third. Meng Chong was excited. The blood-red saber light crisscrossed in the air, covering I Ching like a huge net. I Ching tried his best to protect his body with the iron fan. But even so, that horrifying saber light still numbed his entire body and made his blood boil. The seventh saber attack. This saber attack was launched last, but it was faster than the previous few saber lights and cut open I Ching's hairband. I Ching's long black hair danced in the air as he put away his iron fan. I still can't beat you. Just now, he had already used his ace attacks. However, under Meng Chong's saber light, those ace attacks were not as good as his normal attacks. He understood that this was because his ace attacks were not perfect yet. Otherwise, it would not be so easy for Meng Chong to find the flaws in his attacks. However, everything has its pros and cons. After this battle, it would be easier for him to find the flaws in his attacks. Meng Chong laughed and said, "Being able to force me to use the 7-saber attack is already very good." Beside Yi Chun, Wu Zoming sighed and said, "I wonder who can beat Brother Meng Chong." After saying this, he glanced at Yi Chun. Yi Chun gave him a mysterious feeling. Even now, he still did not know Yi Chun's real power. Maybe there was a chance. Of course, Wu Zoming was not sure. Let's keep watching. Yi Chun did not make any assumptions. Soon, the 6th round ended. Until now, there were only 5 people who had an undefeated record. They were Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong, Peach Blossom Hand Zhou Ruo, Ghost Sword Li Kuang, Tai Feng, and Yi Chun. Although Madman Xiao Yi and Li Yun did not lose, they had a draw after all. They had lost 1 point. After the 7th round, there was one less person who had an undefeated record. It was Peach Blossom Hand Zhou Ruo. He was unlucky and met Iron Fan I Ching. After exchanging hundreds of moves, he was defeated by I Ching. Although he lost, his power still made the crowd fear him. In the crowd's anticipation, the 8th round began. The first 3 rounds could barely be considered exciting. When it came to the 4th round, the crowd burst into cheers. The contestants on the stage were Yi Chun and Ghost Sword Li Kuang. If it were in the morning, the crowd would definitely not be cheering like this. However, Yi Chun had been winning all the time, and his popularity had skyrocketed. He had gained a lot of supporters, including some of the inner disciples. On the VIP seats, Yi Tianhao and Shun Yuqing's breathing almost stopped. It was not an exaggeration to say that this year's Sky Cloud Martial School's inner disciple ranking competition was one of the most thrilling events in their lives. Every time Yi Chun stepped onto the stage, they would be on tenterhooks for a while, afraid to see Yi Chun fail. Although Yi Chun's results had already made them very satisfied, who wouldn't want their children to do better? Fortunately, up until now, they had seen Yi Chun win again and again, and it seemed to be quite easy. But now it was different. Yi Chun's opponent was the mysterious Ghost Sword Li Kuang. Whether he could win or not was still unknown. Chapter 110. I'm afraid Brother Yi Chun is in danger. Senior Brother Meng Chong and Senior Brother Li Kuang have always been able to restrain people with powerful movement techniques. Senior Brother Feng Ping had been defeated by the 2 of them. Unknowingly, everyone had added the word Senior Brother behind Yi Chun's name. Yes, let's see if Brother Yi Chun can block Brother Li Kuang's first sword. If he can block the first sword, then he can block the second and third sword. Ghost Sword Li Kuang's sword art was unpredictable. As long as one's strength was slightly weaker, it would be difficult to block his sword. Only when one's strength surpassed the opponent's could one win. On the platform, Li Kuang's eyes were cold. His back was straight like a great sword. 30 steps away from him, Yi Chun looked indifferent and calm. I only need 1 sword to defeat an ordinary person. You are quite strong. You should be able to force me to use my 3rd sword. Li Kuang looked at Yi Chun and said coldly. Yi Chen said, "Really? I advise you to go all out. Do you think you can force me to go all out with your strength?" Li Kuang's eyes became colder. The two stood 30 steps away from each other. One's eyes were cold, while the other looked calm. Everyone's breathing stopped as they stared at the stage without blinking. Buzz. The storage ring emitted a faint light, and the hidden cloud sword appeared in Yi Chen's hand. He said lightly, "If you don't go all out, you won't have any chance of winning." Most of the people were stunned. What? Brother Yi Chen uses a sword, just like Brother Li Kuang. This is amazing. Brother Yi Chen didn't take the previous battle seriously at all. A battle between two great swordsmen. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Yi Chen suddenly took out his sword. It was a huge shock to the spectators. After all, they knew that without a swordsman's battle power would be greatly reduced. Only with a sword in hand could a swordsman unleash his full strength. On the elders' seats, a few elders nodded and laughed. Interesting. With a hidden cloud sword in his hand, Yi Chen's aura changed. His eyes were as sharp as a sword, capable of penetrating people's hearts. A sharp aura was emitted from his body. Li Kuang was slightly surprised. He really didn't expect Yi Chen to be a swordsman. He couldn't be blamed for not seeing through it. It was because he hit it too well. Under normal circumstances, a swordsman with some achievements would have some qualities of the sword, such as sharpness, coldness, and so on. However, Yi Chen's temperament had nothing to do with these. It looked very ordinary. Of course, he didn't know that Yi Chen had already trained his chi hiding spell to a very high level. Not only could he hide his cultivation level, he could also hide his aura, making it hard for people to see through him. Not to mention Li Kuang, even a clasping Yuan realm sword artist might not be able to see through him. Since you are also a swordsman, that's for the best. Defeating a swordsman is undoubtedly more interesting. I hope you can last longer. Li Kuang's slender right hand was placed on the hilt of his sword. Waves of true qi were injected into the sword, ready to deal a fatal blow at any time. Shoo! Li Kuang moved. His whole body was like a sharp sword that was unsheathed, rushing towards Yi Chen at an extreme speed. In the blink of an eye, the distance between the two had shortened to 5 steps. Ecstasy! Only then did Li Kuang pull out his sword. Once the sword was out of the sheath, the twisted black sword light seemed slow but was actually fast. It seemed to move from top to bottom like a nightmare, making people unable to tell where the opponent was going to attack. Zhang Haoran's face turned pale. He was defeated by this sword. The pain of not being able to use his power and not knowing what to do was still fresh in his memory. Clang! Under the nervous and excited gazes of the crowd, Yi Chen also made his move. The angle of the sword was unimaginable. It was like an antelope's horn, a divine stroke. Not only that, Yi Chen's sword light was very thin. It was the kind of thin that was condensed to the extreme. It was even sharper. Clang! Li Kuang's first sword was blocked, but he didn't care. He was about to make his second sword to suppress his opponent. But what surprised him was that Yi Chen took the initiative to counterattack. Peak of perfection. The lone peak of 13 swords was only a top-rank mortal realm sword art, but in the hands of Yi Chen, it was extremely powerful. A stunning sword light pierced through the air and went straight for Li Kuang's chest. Li Kuang took a step back and slashed out with his black long sword, trying to take back the initiative. Yi Chen's eyes were sharp. He twisted his wrist, and the sword light exploded in a very small area, layer upon layer, spreading out towards Li Kuang. What? The incoming sword light gave Li Kuang the feeling of a huge mountain, one after another, attacking his mind. At this moment, Li Kuang stopped underestimating Yi Chen. His body rose from the ground and slashed down. Kacha! 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 When the two sword lights collided, the platform was cut into pieces, and the hard stone pillars at the edge of the platform were cut off. This series of actions happened in the blink of an eye. Many people didn't even see how the two exchanged blows. It was so fast that it was terrifying. Such a thrilling battle. Every sword is so dangerous. There's no time to react at all. Senior brother Yi Chen is indeed powerful. He easily blocked Li Kuang's first sword and even took the initiative to counterattack. On the other side, Pei Shaoqing and Qiu Ruotong stood together. Qiu Ruotong said, "Your friend is in danger." Pei Shaoqing smiled confidently. "Don't underestimate Li Kuang. In the past year, his sword arts have been improving rapidly, and if I'm not wrong, he has already mastered the 7th sword of the 9 Ghost Shadow Sword. That sword is enough to defeat 3 Yi Chens, and now he has only used 3 sword moves. But I feel that Yi Chen is also not using his full power." Li Kuang's figure floated back and lightly landed on the ground. He solemnly looked at the distant Yi Chen. "I admit that you're qualified to make me go all out. However, it's still impossible for you to defeat me. I'll let you see my true strength now." Li Kuang took a step forward as a sharp qi flow burst out from his body, pouncing toward Yi Chen with an earth-shattering force. At the same time, the black sword light became extremely frightening, turning the formless qi flow into a dense black color, covering the existence of the sword light. 10,000 ghost soul devour. This time, Li Kuang did not hold back. He knew that the 4th, 5th, and even 6th sword attacks would not be able to do anything to Yi Chen. Only the 7th sword attack would have the confidence to defeat Yi Chen without any resistance. The black airflow swept over along with the sword light, but Yi Chen wasn't afraid. He slightly closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, his eyes were like 2 sword lights, tearing through the void. Break! When Yi Chen waved his sword, all the nearby inner disciples who used swords were frightened. For no reason, the swords on their waists trembled, wanting to fly out of their sheaths and merge with Yi Chen's sword aura. No matter how they tried to suppress it, they couldn't stabilize it. Many big shots on the VIP seats exclaimed, "Sword intent! It's actually sword intent! How is this possible?" Chapter 111. In the Windy Nation, only the leader of the North Snow Martial Academy, Shui Warren, had comprehended the blade intent. As for whether there were other hidden figures, no one knew. Just like the blade intent, the sword intent was also very hard to comprehend. At least until now, no one in the Windy Nation had ever comprehended the sword intent. Among the younger generation, there were only a few people who had a chance. The head disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, Hidden Fragrance Sword Zhu Mei, was one of them. However, no one had expected that in an inner disciple ranking competition, there would be a nobody who had comprehended the sword intent that all the sword artists dreamed of. How shocking was that? No, he hasn't comprehended the real sword intent yet. It can only be counted as half-step sword intent. On the VIP seats, a cyan-clothed man said slowly. Next to him, a beautiful young lady in a pink dress looked confused. "Half-step sword intent?" The cyan-clothed man explained, "I have seen a sword artist who had comprehended the sword intent in the Ritter Nation. That kind of power that could cut through the void was still fresh in my memory. After I came back, I made up my mind that I must comprehend my own sword intent. However, in the past few years, I have only comprehended a little bit of it, but my cultivation has been improving at an amazing speed." The beautiful young lady suddenly understood. No wonder her husband's cultivation was getting more and more profound. It was because he was stimulated by something. However, her husband couldn't comprehend the sword intent no matter how hard he tried, but a 15 or 16-year-old boy had done it. She had to admit that sometimes a few days of effort from a genius was equivalent to a few years of effort from others. The beautiful young lady was the owner of the Flower Fairy restaurant in the ancient spring town, Flower Fairy. Next to her was her husband, the blue cloud sword artist, Shun Lang. Rumble. While the two were talking, a storm was already brewing on the platform. The half-step sword intent was about 3 to 4 meters long. It sliced through the black chi flow and the horrifying black sword light like cutting a piece of tofu. Then, the sword chi, which was only 2/3 smaller, still had some power left on the ground and flashed past Li Kuang's side. In the next second, the rock wall in front of the VIP seats had become soft, and stone powder was falling down. Li Kuang stood on the spot in a daze. Just now, he felt the presence of death. If it wasn't for the opponent being merciful and deliberately deviating from the attack's trajectory, that sword chi would have definitely cut him in half and turned him into a blood mist with no bones left. Puff! Suddenly, Li Kuang spat out a mouthful of blood. Although the sword qi hadn't hurt him, the half-step sword intent contained within it had made his blood boil. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, but he felt much better. Yi Chun is victorious. The administrator who drew lots recovered from his shock and announced loudly. Sheathing the hidden cloud sword, Yi Chun turned around and walked away. In the elder's seating area, the head elder let out a long breath and said, although it's only a half-step sword intent, and it's still uncertain whether he can comprehend the real sword intent or not, the success rate is still 10 times or even 100 times higher than the others. He has already comprehended the half-step sword intent at such a young age. His potential is limitless. In the future, he will definitely become one of the 4 pillars of our Sky Cloud Martial School. However, we still need to observe him carefully and test his loyalty. Of course. On the other hand, Yi Tianhao and Shun Yuqing were overjoyed. The Duanmu family had a young master Duanmu, and their Yi family had a genius who had comprehended the half-step sword intent. In the future, they would definitely be able to catch up with the Duanmu family, or even surpass the Duanmu family and become the leader of the top 8 families. The others also sighed in their hearts. After today's fight, Yi Chun had become quite famous. Within a couple of days, his name would spread across the entire Windy Nation. Some people were happy, but some people were hiding their evil intentions. A middle-aged man with a scar on his face, who was wearing a navy blue robe, looked down with a hint of killing intent flashing through his eyes. He thought to himself, this kid can't be allowed to live. Otherwise, when he grows up, the Sky Cloud Martial School will surpass the Purple Sun Martial School and even the North Snow Martial Academy and the Emerald Martial Palace. He is a dangerous person. If anyone knew what the middle-aged man was thinking, they would be very surprised because this man was not a member of the martial school. Instead, he was a solitary martial artist named Zhu Laiyang. He had been famous for decades and was now at the peak of the early clasping Yuan realm. However, if the leader of the Purple Sun Martial School knew about this, he would not be surprised. Zhu Laiyang had been the intelligence elder of the Purple Sun Martial School since a long time ago, and was responsible for collecting all kinds of information in the martial world. At the same time, when the Purple Sun Martial School was inconvenient to deal with, he would take care of it. In the past, Zhu Laiyang had killed a lot of talented martial artists, and had killed those who could pose a threat to the Purple Sun Martial School. Yi Chun, you are so dead. Zhu Laiyang sneered in his heart, but didn't show it on his face. The fight continued, but in the eyes of the audience, the exciting fight had become boring. Not far away, Song Fei glanced at Yi Chun and said to Yi Qing, it seems that in this year's Wind Cloud Martial School, only he can compete with Meng Chong. Yi Qing said, the sword qi combined with the half-step sword intent is indeed very powerful, but it is still hard to say if he wants to win against Meng Chong. Of course, both of them are already at the top of the core disciples. The top 10 inter-disciple competition is not that important to them. Plus, the Sky Cloud Martial School is just the Sky Cloud Martial School. There's still the other top 4 martial institutions, and outside of the Windy Nation, there are many more powerful martial institutions. Therefore, you have to look at the bigger picture. Being powerful for a short period of time does not mean anything. Song Fei sighed, yeah. The top young martial artist of our Windy Nation, the young Master Emerald, is only ranked 68th in the Hidden Dragon rank. Who knows how many geniuses will appear in the next Hidden Dragon rank? The 8th round of the competition soon finished. There were 3 people who had a perfect winning record. There were the Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong, Tai Feng, and Yi Chun. There were 5 people who had a perfect winning record. The 9th round, the 9th battle. The Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong against the crazy man Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi grinned and said, Meng Chong, this time you are going to lose your first place. It is only the half-step sword intent. The true spirit continent is not dominated by warriors who have mastered the sword intent and blade intent. I, Meng Chong, do not need to master the blade intent to win against anyone. Meng Chong did not care if Yi Chun had mastered the half-step sword intent or not. For him, all he wanted to do was to win against his opponents again and again, to push his blade to its limit. After he finished talking, Meng Chong's aura became even more intense. What a good Meng Chong. He did not fall for my provocation at all. Xiao Yi was planning to use Yi Chun to attack Meng Chong and distract him, but it did not work at all. Instead, it increased Meng Chong's aura. However, Meng Chong was right. Learning the sword intent was indeed a way to become powerful. However, there were so many ways to become powerful, and the sword art was only one of them. Plus, Yi Chen's foundation was still not that deep, and his cultivation was also one level lower than theirs. So there was no need for him to be afraid. If that is the case, let's fight. Xiao Yi yelled. He threw out a punch with a thunder-like chi. Break for me. Meng Chong started running. The long blade in his hand had already been out of its scabbard. The blood-red blade light sliced towards Xiao Yi along with the chi. Dang! Xiao Yi was indeed worthy of being ranked third in the last in-dragon competition. His power was not weaker than I Ching's, and he was even better at fighting head-on. With only one punch, he had shattered the weakened blade light. The second blade, the blood-red blade light, shot up into the sky. It even changed the color of the air. Xiao Yi did not back out. Instead, he drew a half circle with both of his hands. A millstone-sized ball of chi gathered in front of his chest and clashed with the blade light. Boom! The power spread out in all directions. Xiao Yi backed out 3 steps. A little bit of blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth. Off the stage, Yi Chen thought to himself, Xiao Yi is even more powerful than the ghost sword Li Kuang, but he could only barely block Meng Chong's second blade attack. It would be really hard to win against him. Chapter 112. The third blade. Meng Chong's long blade flashed in the air. Suddenly, a bright blood-red blade light appeared, bringing with it an unstoppable sharpness as it slashed toward Xiao Yi. So fast, Xiao Yi could only see a blood-red flash in front of him. The blade light was already 1 meter away from him. At this moment, it was already too late to dodge. Furthermore, that was not his style. If he were to take it head-on, he would definitely vomit blood and retreat. Meng Chong's third blade was not that easy to block. Even the Iron Fan I Ching could only protect himself from being injured. Roar! Xiao Yi bent his body. A green halo spread out. A huge Jin Chi arm extended out from his shoulder. A fist clashed with the blade light. The Chi energy formed a circle and suddenly expanded. Crack, 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 crack. The stone pillars that were far away from each other started to crack. It looked like they would shatter if the wind blew. Meng Chong stopped his attack. He did not attack again. The crowd started to discuss. Brother Xiao Yi actually has a Jun Chi arm on his shoulder. This is unbelievable. The Jun Chi arm does not look like a human's. It looks more like a beast's forelimb. You can even vaguely see the scales made of Jun Chi. And the palm is like a beast's claw, and it is so powerful, it blocked Brother Meng Chong's third blade attack with only 1 punch, and it was not damaged at all. Looks like when Brother Xiao Yi was fighting with Li Yun, he did not use his full power. He must have saved it for Brother Meng Chong. Li Yun's eyes shone, but he did not say anything. Pop! Something even more shocking happened. A Jin Chi arm extended out from Xiao Ye's left shoulder, but it was green in color, and there were traces of green chi rising from it. It looked like a burning flame. Meng Chong, I have never shown this ancient demon secret art to anyone before. Today you'll be the first person to see it. Wiping the blood from his mouth, Xiao Yi looked excited. The ancient demon secret art was something he found in a ruin by chance. It was divided into 3 parts, the first part, the second part, and the last part. He only had the first part. It was not complete, but it was not weak at all. It was comparable to a low-rank Earth Realm martial skill. Ancient demon secret art. Yi Chen had never heard of such a martial technique before. Seems like this Xiao Yi had a fortuitous encounter. Meng Chong glanced at the Jin Chi arm and said nonchalantly, I don't care what kind of ancient demon secret technique you have learned. In my eyes, there are only those who have fallen. Then go ahead and try. Xiao Yi was already 2 meters tall. With the addition of 2 gigantic Jun Chi arms on his shoulders, he looked like a giant. An endless pressure spread out from his body. The wind in the plaza seemed to have stopped. What answered him was a series of blood-red saber lights. The saber lights were like crescent moons, and they formed a blood-red wheel that was more than 10 meters tall. The rotating blade aura wheel sliced the air into pieces, rolling toward Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi laughed. He did not retreat. He raised his two gigantic Jinqi arms and welcomed the attack. Bang, 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 bang. The two true energy arms raised their fists and punched the blood-red Dharma wheel again and again. Instantly, red and green energy splattered in all directions, creating a very beautiful scene. Break! Meng Chong's body appeared in the blood-red Dharma wheel. His right arm suddenly emitted a ball of blood-red light. The light went into his saber, and he waved it. Swoosh! The green Jinqi arm on Xiao Ye's right shoulder was cut off. It flew more than 10 meters away. It turned into pure Yuan Qi and merged with the air. One of senior brother Xiao Ye's Zhenqi arm was cut off. Someone shouted. The others did not have time to talk. They were afraid that they would miss something interesting. Xiao Ye's face turned pale. The Zhenqi arm was formed by his Zhenqi. It consumed a lot of Zhenqi. Now that one of it was cut off, the total amount of Zhenqi was reduced by a third. His blood was boiling. I'll cut off your other arm. Meng Chong did not stop. He flipped his saber and slashed towards the green Jinqi arm on Xiao Ye's left shoulder. Clang! It was as if the saber had slashed onto a well-tempered steel. It created a lot of colorful sparks. If one looked closely, they would realize that the saber had only cut through half of it. It could not cut through. Xiao Yi forcefully suppressed his boiling qi and blood and Jinqi. Both of his arms gathered in the air and pushed out a ball of Zhenqi bullet that was glowing with a green light. Meng Chong's saber was stuck on the green Jinqi arm. He could not pull it out. Seeing the Zhenqi bullet flying toward his chest, he knew that he could not hold back anymore. He opened his mouth and let out a thunderous shout. Meng Chong clenched his left hand into a fist, blood red. Lightning shot out from between his fingers, crackling loudly. Swoosh! The Zhenqi bullet was like a punctured balloon. It disappeared into thin air. Yi Chun shook his head. Even this could not do anything to Meng Chong. Xiao Yi was definitely going to lose. But to be able to force Meng Chong to this extent, it was already very commendable. Break! The saber continued to attack. It finally cut off the green Jinqi arm. But this green Jinqi arm was very strange. When it was cut off, it immediately exploded into countless of green flames. It grew bigger as it touched the wind. It burned everything. Swoosh, swoosh. Meng Chong saw that the situation was not good. His body flew backwards. The platform he was standing on was instantly burned into a glass-like shape. There was blood coming out of his mouth and nose, but Xiao Yi was not too upset. He said, I lost. The two Jinqi arms had consumed 2/3 of his Zhenqi. Plus the Zhenqi bullet from before, there was not much Zhenqi left in his body. He could not fight against Meng Chong anymore. Letting out a breath, Meng Chong said, To be able to force me to this extent, you were the first one. Hee hee, same to you. You still have a battle with Yi Chun. His half-step sword intent is not that simple either. Let's see how you're going to beat him. After saying that, Xiao Yi jumped off the platform. When this battle was over, the other two platforms had also finished their battles. The remaining two battles were not worth watching. They were all inner disciples with very few points. They would definitely be eliminated, including Zhang Haoren. It was not easy for him to make it this far. Finally, the last round of battles began. When it was the 7th battle, the heavyweight battle started again. This battle was between Yi Chun and Tai Feng. One of them was a genius sword artist who had comprehended the half-step sword intent, while the other one was the representative of a late bloomer. Up until now, both of them had maintained a perfect winning record. No matter which side won, there would be one less person with perfect winning record, and that person would definitely compete with the Blood Shadow Blade, Meng Chong, for the title of the first inner disciple. Many people were thinking about this in their minds. Who was more powerful between Yi Chun and Tai Feng? Judging from the previous battles, it was really hard to tell. Yi Chun's sword qi was indeed powerful, but Tai Feng's leg art was also not to be underestimated. Pei Shaoqing, who was as powerful as the ghost sword Li Kuang, was an example. Plus, no one knew if he had any more powerful skills. Tai Feng smiled and said to Yi Chun, Thank you for your guidance. Okay. Yi Chun nodded. To be honest, he was a bit scared of Tai Feng, since he did not have many chances to show his power, so he had to do it himself. Chapter 113. On the stage, the two stood 50 steps away from each other. Perhaps it was because Tai Feng felt that Yi Chan was not easy to deal with. This time, he did not take a passive approach. For the first time, he took the initiative. He slightly lifted his right leg, and a vast force suddenly integrated into his body. Suddenly, the airflow above the square became abnormal, and a fierce wind swept across. On the opposite side, Yi Chun was dressed in a white robe. The hem of his robe was fluttering in the wind like a small boat in a stormy sea. However, when he pulled out the hidden cloud soared halfway. The wind on the square seemed to have been cut into two halves. One half of Tai Feng's side was raging, while the other half of Yi Chen's side was calm. Compared to the huge square, the two of them were so small, like they were floating in the air. However, at this moment, the vast square seemed to be unable to contain the two of them, as if it could collapse at any time. Brother Tai Feng is going to use that kick again. I wonder how Brother Yi Chen is going to block it. Brother Yi Chen's sword Qi is invincible. I'm afraid he can cut through Brother Tai Feng's attack with just one sword. I bet that Brother Tai Feng will win 1,000 gold. Do you dare? Why not? I bet that Brother Yi Chun will win 2,000 gold. Me too. Me too. In the spectator seats, some of the outer sect disciples who had different opinions started to gamble with huge sums of money. For them, they could show off their foresight and earn money at the same time. So why not? As for losing, they didn't even think about it. Seeing this scene on the stage, Pei Xiaoqing said lightly, "This kick is very powerful. Fighting with it is like fighting against the whole world. It is boundless and endless." So powerful? Qiu Ruodong, who seemed to be very close to Pei Xiaoqing, asked in surprise. If it was not so, I would not have lost so easily. There was no way for me to resist at all. Only Meng Chong can break this force. Qiu Ruodong thought that Yi Chun could also do it, but she did not say it out loud. After all, she would find out soon. One kick to move the wind and clouds. A thunderous roar was heard. Tai Feng slightly leaned his upper body back and threw out a kick. He had turned the power of the world into his own and attacked Yi Chen's half of the body. Pop! The calm aura that Yi Chun had created earlier had been broken, and a ferocious airflow swept over with an even more terrifying aura, causing many inner sanctum disciples to lose their footing, and their hearts were filled with shock. Break! Whoosh! In the void, the pure and bright sword Qi flashed and disappeared. The momentum was like a deflated balloon, collapsing on itself. Senior Brother Tai Feng's momentum has been broken. Senior Brother Yi Chun is indeed powerful. The eyes of the inner disciples who supported Yi Chun lit up. It seems like the half-step sword intent is more powerful. Senior Brother Yi Chun is really a godly person. One sword and one person. He can even cut through the great momentum. On the VIP seats, the Green Sky swordsman, Shun Lang, said solemnly, "This kid actually possesses the ability to sever the power of nothingness. I'm afraid he's not far from comprehending the true sword intent." Tai Feng's naive expression disappeared as he stared at Yi Chun with a serious expression. Yi Chun was the first person who had given him endless pressure ever since he had comprehended the general trend. In front of Yi Chun, the so-called general trend could not even withstand a single blow. It seemed like he could only attack with brute force. Changing wind and cloud, Tai Feng's entire body rose up from the ground. All of the general trend had been infused into his leg power, attacking towards Yi Chun one after another. His body was light and agile, and his leg power was as heavy as a mountain. The airflow around Yi Chun's body surged, and when those countless leg powers landed on him, it seemed like the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. Yi Chun was in the middle of it all, but his expression was calm. Without any hesitation, he waved his hidden cloud sword continuously, and within a blink of an eye, he had thrown out dozens of sword attacks. Each sword attack would shoot out a 3-meter-long thick sword Qi. The sword Qi was so sharp that it seemed like it was going to tear the space in front of it apart. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Beams of sword Qi shot up into the sky, cleanly cutting through the leg power. It was so sharp that no one could stop it. Tai Feng's facial expression suddenly changed. Zhen Qi surged out of his body, and his leg power became even stronger. Wave after wave of Zhen Qi collided with the platform surface, causing the platform to crack and collapse, and the stone pillars to collapse. Many people had started to support Yi Chen on the way, because Yi Chen's sword attack had been so brilliant, and it had easily broken Tai Feng's momentum. Now, seeing Tai Feng's power, they couldn't help but worry about Yi Chen. No matter how powerful the sword Qi was, it was still limited, and how could it fight against the endless momentum? Break! At this critical moment, Yi Chen didn't hold back anymore. The hidden cloud sword seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually moving very fast. The moment the tip of the sword reached its peak, the half-step sword intent burst out. Clang, 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 clang. Caught off guard, the great swords around the inner disciples' waists all flew out of their scabbards and merged with Yi Chen's sword aura. With a sharp aura that was enough to cut through a mountain, the swords rushed towards Tai Feng, who was in the air. Clang! A mountain cracking sound arose. Tai Feng's leg power was broken, and he was sent flying backwards while vomiting blood. What a terrifying sword power! It even took away our swords. In the future, if any sword artist encounters Brother Yi Chen, he or she will be at a disadvantage. The half-step sword intent is too powerful, and the swords won't be under his control. Ji Shuiyan came out of the Emerald Martial Palace not long ago, and our Sky Cloud Martial School also has Brother Yi Chen. But unfortunately, none of them can be compared with young Master Emerald. Standing on the ruined platform, Yi Chen waved the hidden cloud sword in his hand. Dozens of swords seemed to be attracted by an invisible force, and they all fell down, neatly inserted into the ground in front of the inner disciples, forming a row. This is mine, and mine. All the inner disciples who used swords walked up and pulled out their own swords. Tai Feng landed on the ground and said in admiration, "That last sword attack was brilliant. I didn't expect the half-step sword intent to be so powerful." Yi Chen smiled lightly. "Your leg power is also very powerful. If it was a little bit more powerful, even I wouldn't be able to defeat you." The general trend of Taishu is very mysterious, and I only learned it by chance. I won't be able to make a breakthrough in 1 or 2 years, so I can only try to improve my skills. But you have to be careful of Meng Chong. His blade power is too powerful. Even the half-step sword intent seems to be unable to defeat him. Indeed, Yi Chen nodded. In front of absolute power, fancy skills were useless. His current half-step sword intent was a bit flashy and could not be compared to the real sword intent. After Tai Feng's defeat, only Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong and Yi Chen were left. In the crowd's eyes, the other disciples had no chance to compete for the first place, and the winner could only be one of them. After the 9th round, there were only 6 rounds left in the 10th round. The next 6 rounds were extremely intense. Some of the inner disciples who had a chance to compete for the top 10 were not afraid of the top 10 inner disciples, so they all used their most powerful skills to fight against the top 10 inner disciples. Unfortunately, the gap between their fighting power was too huge. Even if they tried their best, it would be useless. The 10th round had ended. Meng Chong and Yi Chen were tied for the first place with 20 points. Li Yunping had won 1 round, so he had 19 points, ranked 3rd. Yi Qing and Tai Feng had lost 1 round each, so they had 18 points, ranked 4th. Xiao Yi had lost 1 round and drawn 1 round, so he had 17 points, ranked 6th. Zhou Ruo, Pei Shaoqing, Go Sword Li Kuang, and Xiu Ruodong were ranked 6th. There were 3 people who had been eliminated from the ranking: Feng Ping, Dong Haohua, and Song Fei. None of them had more than 15 points. Chapter 114. No matter what, the new top 10 inner disciples had been born, and the previous one had become a thing of the past. This year, the most eye-catching disciples were without a doubt Li Yun, Tai Feng, and Yi Chen. The 3 of them had stood out from hundreds of inner disciples. They had overcome all kinds of obstacles along the way, and each of them had performed their best martial arts. Towards the end, they had even defeated a few of the top 10 inner disciples of the last year. Among the 3, Yi Chun was the most talented one. With only the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm, he had won all his battles without losing a single one. He had also learned the half-step sword intent, which was the dream of every sword artist. His comprehensive ability was the best among the young generation of the Sky Cloud Martial School, and he was almost as famous as the core disciples. Of course, becoming one of the top 10 inner disciples was not the end of it. Next was the ranking competition. The ranking competition seemed complicated, but it was actually very simple. That was, the contestants would have to fight against the other 9 disciples one by one. As for those who had already fought against each other, the points would be calculated according to the results. For example, Yi Chun had beaten Feng Ping, Dong Haohua, and Tai Feng, so he had 6 points. He still had to fight against the other 6 disciples, including the Blood Shadow Blade, Meng Chong. For this competition, the leaders of the Sky Cloud Martial School had prepared more than 500 yuan chi pellets. Every disciple who participated in the competition could take one. After taking the yuan chi pellet, not only would they feel energetic, they would also be able to recover from minor injuries. After resting for about half an hour, the head elder saw that all 10 of them were full of energy, so he announced the start of the competition. Yi Chun's first opponent was the Rainbow Sword, Qiu Ruodong, but she gave up. After all, everyone knew how powerful Yi Chun was, so there was no need to waste any more time. The second opponent was Pei Shaoqing, who also gave up. The third opponent was the Peach Hand, Zhou Ruo. Although I don't have much hope, I still want to fight against you. Zhou Ruo, who had a beautiful face, lightly landed on the stage. Yi Chun nodded and said, "Let's start." Right from the start, Zhou Ruo used all of her power. The peach-colored Jinqi around her body burst out, attacking towards Yi Chun like a thunderbolt. It was obviously a big change from her previous casual fighting style. Before the palm power exploded, the stone pillar behind Yi Chun had already been shattered. What a domineering palm energy. A strange look flashed through Yi Chun's eyes. Without any hesitation, he directly waved his sword, which contained the half-step sword intent. Bang! Under the effect of the half-step sword intent, Yi Chun's attack was incomparably condensed. With only one attack, he had broken through Zhou Ruo's palm power. With a wave of her hand, Zhou Ruo set up a layer of peach-red chi barrier in front of her, and her whole body was sent flying. Yi Chun followed up with another slash. Zhou Ruo gritted her teeth. "If this move still can't do anything to you, I'll admit defeat." As she spoke, Zhou Ruo quickly formed a seal with her hands. Wave after wave of true energy frantically gathered in her hands. In the end, it transformed into a pink true energy bird. The bird spread its wings and shot out like a bolt of red lightning, unable to be seen by the naked eye. So fast. I didn't expect senior sister Zhou Ruo to have hidden her trump card as well. The spectating inner disciples exclaimed. Iron Fan Yi Chun laughed bitterly. His opponent did not use this move when they fought. Of course, he also had his own ultimate move that he had not used. His opponent should know this. The huge Jinqi bird arrived in a blink of an eye. It was about to hit Yi Chun. Yi Chun looked calm. The others might not be able to see the trajectory of the huge Jinqi bird, but he could. It was all thanks to his powerful soul power. A silver line flashed through the air. The hidden cloud sword in Yi Chun's hand had pointed at the weakest spot of the huge Jinqi bird. All of a sudden, the huge Jinqi bird became extremely unstable. With a popping sound, it disappeared into thin air. Zhou Ruo was shocked by Yi Chun's sword art. The bluebird seal was so fast, but it was still hit by his sword. Furthermore, it was the weakest spot of the bird. What kind of insight and control did he have? With a bitter smile, Zhou Ruo said, "I have to admit, only you can compete with Meng Chong. I lost." The next battle was not Yi Chun's, but Li Yun's. After all, continuous battles would take a lot of energy, and it would have a huge impact on the battle. Plus, Yi Chun's next opponent was Xiao Yi, who would definitely not admit defeat. It would be a tough battle for sure. Qiu Ruodong knew that she would not be able to compete with any one of the 10 people, but she still admitted defeat. Pei Shaoqing and Li Yun started fighting. After exchanging dozens of moves, Li Yun executed the ultimate skill of sword light division. 14 sword lights shot out in a row. One of the sword lights had 2 layers of force, one bright and one dark. He managed to defeat Pei Shaoqing without any mishaps. After that, it was the battle between Taifeng and Yi Qing. The two of them were evenly matched. After hundreds of attacks, there was no clear winner. However, toward the end of the battle, Taifeng, who had the support of his power, was getting more and more powerful. Yi Qing kept performing his ultimate skills, but he still could not make a comeback. He had no choice but to admit defeat. If the battle continued, he would definitely lose. One after another, the battles started and ended. Soon, it was Blood Shadow Blade Meng Chong's turn. His opponent was Li Yun. Li Yun did not waste any time. He attacked immediately. With a wave of his hand, 14 sword lights were shot out. Break! Meng Chong's body moved along with his blade. The blood-red blade light was unstoppable. It easily shattered the incoming sword lights. As for that bright and dark sword light, it was instantly shattered by his fist. Li Yun yelled. Another 3 sword lights were shot out. These 3 sword lights were indeed huge. They almost covered half of the platform. They were flying towards Meng Chong in a triangular formation. Meng Chong did not dare to be careless. The blood-red light shot out from both of his arms and into his long blade. He had broken the incoming sword lights 3 times in a row. After that, he threw a punch at Li Yun's protective Jinqi layer. Crackle. Blood-red lightning flashed. Li Yun's mouth was bleeding. He was thrown off the platform. Meng Chong's Thunder Fist is getting more and more powerful. Yi Qing thought to himself. Meng Chong got off the platform. Yi Chun and Xiao Yi got on the platform. If you want to challenge Meng Chong, you will have to get past me first. Xiao Ye's upper body bent. A misty green light shone. 2 gigantic Zhenqi arms extended out from his shoulders, one green and one green. The green one was a little illusory. The green one had qi flow rising like a burning flame. Just like a giant, Xiao Yi rushed towards Yi Chun with big steps, throwing out a punch. Tyrannical Rampage. Out of everyone's expectation, Yi Chun did not use his sword skill. He made a fist with his left hand and threw out a punch. Puff, 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 puff. Under Xiao Ye's shocked gaze, the blue Zhenqi arm was broken into pieces. It turned into the purest Yuan Qi and disappeared in the air. Lose. Xiao Yi did not back off. He threw out an even more powerful green Zhenqi arm from his left shoulder. He wanted to defeat Yi Chun directly. Yi Chun yelled coldly, dominating one direction. Boom. He threw out a punch with a black light. The qi behind him was sucked into it. It was just like Tai Feng's power. It clashed with Xiao Ye's green Jinqi arm. Thump, thump, thump. Xiao Yi took a few steps back. The green Jinqi arm was showing signs of collapsing. He was really shocked. The green Jinqi arm was the evolved version of the blue Jinqi arm. Its power was more than 50% stronger, but it couldn't even block a punch from his opponent. How was he supposed to fight? The green Jinqi arm merged with his body. Xiao Yi waved his hand. I'm done. You are the best. Then he turned and walked off the platform. Chapter 115. As long as he beats brother Yi Qing, it will be the battle between brother Meng Chong and brother Yi Chun. Brother Yi Qing should not be able to beat brother Yi Chun. After all, he lost to brother Taifeng. You're right. If brother Meng Chong is still the champion this year, he probably won't get any good rewards. After all, last time he was rewarded with a low-rank Earth Realm fist art. Shocking Thunder Fist. But if brother Yi Chun wins, he will definitely get a low-rank Earth Realm martial art. While the crowd was talking, the competition continued. In fact, although the ranking was still uncertain, it was already clear that the first and second place would be either Meng Chong or Yi Chun. The third to fifth place would be Taifeng, Xiao Yi, and Yi Qing. The sixth to ninth place would be Zhou Ruo, Li Yun, Li Kuang, and Pei Shaoqing. Xiu Ruodong would be the last. In the first round, Li Yun lost to Li Kuang. In the second round, Pei Shaoqing lost to Zhou Ruo. In the third round, Yi Qing lost to Xiao Yi. In the ninth round, Meng Chong walked onto the stage. Taifeng shook his head. I am not his opponent. I give up. Boom. The crowd in the martial field suddenly exploded. Tai Feng had given up, which meant that Meng Chong would fight against Yi Chun in advance. This would undoubtedly be the most anticipated battle of the day. On the east side of the VIP seats, there was a row of teenagers. The oldest among them was only 18 or 19 years old, while the youngest was only 16 or 17. They were all wearing different clothes, but all of them had the unique cloud pattern of the sky, Cloud Martial School, on their sleeves. The auras of this group of people were pure and vast. Nearly half of them could contend with Blood Shadow Saber Meng Chong. Some of them even far surpassed Meng Chong. They sat there and talked cheerfully. They were not affected by the atmosphere at all. They gave off an unfathomable pressure. Jingju, who do you think will win? Among them, a handsome teenager asked the teenager with a cold expression. The cold teenager said indifferently, "Boring." The handsome teenager smiled bitterly. "Is there a need to be so cold?" He turned around and asked the teenager in blue, "Brother Luo, what do you think?" The teenager in blue was indeed the second disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, Luo Hanshan. He lowered his eyes, thought for a while, and said, "I think it will be Yi Chun." "Oh, why is that?" The other person beside him looked surprised. Luo Hanshan said, "Meng Chong is like a sharp blade that can cut through anything. However, if it's too sharp, it'll break easily, which makes it less beautiful. But Yi Chun is like a vast lake, immeasurably deep. Since the beginning of the competition, he has been calm and unruffled. Thus, I deduced that it would be a long battle from the start. In the end, Yi Chun would be the one to persevere. Of course, speculations are just speculations after all. They can't be trusted. If we want to determine the victor, we'll have to fight." The handsome youth smiled and said, "Senior brother Luo's analytical ability has always been very strong, but I feel the same way. Whether the two of them will win will depend on the later stages." The girl in white, who was ranked 8th, suddenly said, "Meng Chong will lose." The first person in line was a slightly older girl with plum blossom embroidery on her clothes. She mocked, "Su Jing, this is the first time I've seen your evaluation." Su Jing didn't say anything. The other people looked at Su Jing with different expressions. Some of them were nervous. Some of them were admiring her. She had just become a core disciple last year, but now she was ranked 8th. Also, it seemed that she had not used all of her power to increase her rank. Otherwise, it would not be impossible for her to be in the top 5. From time to time, the inner disciples below the VIP seats would turn around and take a glance at her. They thought to themselves, "This seat is for core disciples. If I can sit in this seat one day, how glorious would that be?" 5 of the 10 platforms had already been destroyed. Yi Chun and Meng Chong were standing opposite each other on the platform that seemed to be relatively intact, staring at each other without blinking their eyes. Swoosh! Meng Chong took out his long blade and launched the first attack. A sharp blood-red blade light sliced through the air, hacking towards Yi Chun, who was not far away. Clang! No one knew when Yi Chun had also pulled out his sword. He waved out a stream of sword chi to block the incoming blade light. "Take another 10 attacks." Meng Chong's expression was wild. The long blade in his hand was like a wild horse that had just run away from its reins. He crazily waved his blade towards Meng Chong. Ding, 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 ding. All of a sudden, the entire platform was filled with bright sword chi and blood-red blade light. Their figures had already been completely covered by the light and could not be seen by the naked eye. Shoo! Shoo! The two of them were blown back, and once again, they faced each other. "Awesome. Among all the inner disciples, you're the only one who can take 11 attacks from me with all of my power." It had been a long time since Meng Chong had felt this good. Yi Chun's power had made his blood boil, and he was filled with the desire to fight. If he could defeat Yi Chun, he would definitely be able to reach the next level. Yi Chun said, "Let's continue." "All right, let's continue." As soon as they finished talking, their bodies had already collided. The blood-red blade light and the sword chi crisscrossed, fighting against each other. Soon, the platform was destroyed as well. Off the platform, all of the inner disciples were shocked. Apart from the first collision, it was impossible to tell who was fighting who had the upper hand, and who was at a disadvantage. All that could be seen was that the saber was faster than the previous one, and the sword was sharper than the previous one. Towards the end, the shockwave formed by the collision of the sword chi and the saber light was even more terrifying, destroying one platform after another nearby. The figures of the two could no longer be seen, and only the sword chi and the saber light could be seen sweeping from one platform to another, from the ground to the air, and from the air to the platform ruins. They were everywhere, and everywhere was the site of the battle. 100 attacks, 200 attacks, 300 attacks, 500 attacks. The two of them had already exchanged over 500 attacks, but there was still no clear winner. Yi Chen's half-step sword intent could not do anything to Meng Chong's blade power, and Meng Chong's fast blade power could not do anything to Yi Chen either. At this point, it was no longer a competition of power, but a competition of willpower and endurance. Whoever could last longer would be the winner. 1,000 attacks. No winner has been decided yet. Terrifying. An inner disciple looked at the sky. Right then, the sun was setting, and the bright afterglow was shining on the martial field, making the battle look even more intense. He could not help but gasp. Yeah, it would be amazing if the others could block 10 attacks from Brother Meng Chong, but Brother Yi Chen had already exchanged over 1,000 attacks with him. Both of them seemed to have the upper hand. I wonder who will have the last laugh. All of a sudden, the blood-red blade light and the bright sword chi collided with each other, and then shot up into the sky. Waves of powerful shock waves spread out in all directions, which even caused the platform to collapse. The crowd looked over and saw that Yi Chen's sword had blocked Meng Chong's long blade, and the two of them were frozen there. World-shocking thunder. Meng Chong clenched his left hand into a fist and threw it towards Yi Chen's head. Yi Chen sneered and threw out his left fist, which was shining with a black light. Crack! Like a thunderclap, both of them were sent flying backwards. Again, with the protection of the pure jade body-boosting spell, Yi Chen stomped on the platform behind him and shot towards Meng Chong like an arrow. Meng Chong was not scared at all. He threw out another punch. Boom! The two of them moved away from each other as soon as they made contact. There was a faint trace of blood on the corner of Meng Chong's mouth. On the VIP seats of the core disciples, Luo Hanzhan sighed and said, Yi Chen has won. Meng Chong is still slightly weaker than him. It is not easy for him to be able to fight until now. But this Yi Chen is very powerful. He has been winning all the time. Even Meng Chong could not stop his rise. Chapter 116. Again, a blood-red light burst out from Meng Chong's body as he threw out a punch towards Yi Chen along with crackling thunder and lightning. It seemed like he was determined to win or die trying. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. As Meng Chong threw out his punch, Yi Chen could feel a shocking amount of electricity gathering in his body. His skin felt numb, and all of his hairs were standing up. He knew that he could not afford to be hit by that punch. Otherwise, even the pure jade body-boosting spell would not be able to protect him. Thunder and lightning had always been able to ignore defense. Dominating the king. The third movement of the Tyrant Fist art was thrown out. A dense black light was brought out by the fist power, forming an umbrella in front of Yi Chen, blocking out the attack of the electricity. Boom! The broken platform under their feet was split into two. One half was made up of electricity, while the other half was made up of scattered blacklight. Meng Chong puked out a mouthful of blood, which was evaporated in the air by the electricity. He was blown out for hundreds of meters and finally landed heavily on the marble floor. Crack! The floor cracked under Meng Chong's feet. On the other side, Yi Chen was also blown out for 70 to 80 meters, leaving a crack on the floor. It was clear who would win. Looking down at his bare right arm, Yi Chen was shocked. If he had not performed the third movement of the Tyrant Fist art, he would not have been able to win so easily. The Tyrant Fist art was divided into 4 movements. The first style was called Tyrannical Rampage. It belonged to the aggressive type, and it could devour the opponent's chi gene for its own use. However, it could only be used against opponents who were slightly weaker than the user. Against opponents who were stronger than the user, the devouring effect could not be used. The second movement was called Dominating the World. It belonged to the defensive type. When the opponent attacked, it could absorb the yuan qi of the surrounding space and merge it into the fist power. The third movement was called dominating the king. It belonged to the offensive and defensive type. When the punch was thrown out, an umbrella-shaped black light would form a defensive shield, blocking out the opponent's qi. At the same time, his own fist power would be able to attack the opponent without any hindrance. As for the strongest fourth move, Tyrannical Millennium, Yichen currently did not have enough Zhen Qi to support it. Unless he was in a life or death situation, he absolutely could not use it. Otherwise, if he used up too much Zhen Qi, he would not have the strength to protect himself. Letting out a mouthful of turbid air, Yichen raised his head and looked at Meng Chong. Meng Chong stabbed the long blade in his left hand into the ground. He grinned and said, "Great. Today, you are more skilled than me. However, we still have a long way to go. Let's see who will have the last laugh. I'll wait for you." Although that was what he said, Yichen didn't really care about it. Up until now, no one who had been surpassed by him had ever surpassed him, just like Wang Gang, Wu Zongming, Huang Bingguan, Zhang Haoren, and so on. If he was surpassed by someone else, then how could he even talk about becoming more powerful? How could he even talk about catching up with the top 4 young masters and walk out of the Windy Nation and into the world? The world was way too big. The path of a martial artist was like sailing a boat against the current. If one did not keep moving forward, one would fall behind. If one day he was surpassed by someone else, then he would have to reflect on himself. Once Meng Chong was defeated, Yichen would definitely become the #1 inner disciple. The other people who had not fought against him before would not be able to stop him anymore. The audience and the VIP seats were all talking about this. Luo Hanshan said, "The most official competition in our school is the inner disciple ranking competition. Once you become one of the top 10 inner disciples, you will be qualified to challenge core disciples and replace them. I think Yichen and Meng Chong are already at the top of the core disciples. Tai Feng and Xiao Yi are also not bad. You guys should be careful." A few core disciples who were ranked at the bottom said, "Brother Luo, don't worry. We did not waste this year either. We will show them how powerful we are." Indeed, except for that Yi Chun and Meng Chong, who are a bit tricky, the others will have to ask me first if I want to be a core disciple or not. Luo Hanshan smiled. The number of core disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School had always been maintained at 24. If one of them became a core disciple, one of them would have to leave. No one wanted to lose their core disciple status. In the following days, it would definitely be a fierce competition. As for himself, he would also challenge the hidden fragrant sword Zhu Mei when the time was right. Luo Hanshan turned his head and glanced at the beautiful girl who had plum blossom embroidery on her clothes. When the last ray of light of the sunset shone on the horizon, the ranking competition was finally over. According to the ranking, the first place was Yi Chun, who had a perfect winning record. He had defeated 9 people, so he had 18 points. The second place was Meng Chong with 16 points. The third place was Tai Feng with 14 points. The fourth place was Xiao Yi with 12 points. The fifth place was Yi Qing with 10 points. The sixth place was Zhou Ruo with 8 points. The seventh place was Li Kuang with 6 points. The eighth place was Li Yun with 4 points. The ninth place was Pei Xiaoqing with 2 points. And the 10th place was Qiu Ruodong with 0 points. When the ranking was announced, Yi Tianhao laughed out loud and said, "Chen is now the #1 inner disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School. He is the #1 genius in the history of our Yi family." The third leader of the Yi family, Yi Tang and Yi Xian, no one could be compared with him. Shen Yuqing said in an annoyed tone, "Look at you, people go to higher places, water flows to lower places. If Chen wants to be compared, he should be compared with the core disciples of those famous martial institutions. Don't make him look bad." I'm just happy. Many important people around them cupped their hands and said, "Congratulations, Leader Yi. Your son has already mastered the half-step sword intent at such a young age. He will definitely soar into the sky in the future. Leader Yi, if we have the chance, let's have a drink. Our son is not good enough. Leader Yi, you should ask your son to teach him a lesson." Yi Tianhao was in a good mood. He said, "Not at all. Not at all. If you're willing to give me face, please find some time to visit our Yi family. I will definitely welcome you. Of course, of course. The other important people all had their own thoughts, but no matter what they thought, Yi Qin's name had become really famous after today. 16 years old, he had mastered the half-step sword intent. Not to mention the Windy Nation, even in the entire South Shore region, he would not be bad. The only thing he was lacking was his cultivation. Of course, some people were looking forward to Yi Qin's growth, while some were planning to nip him in the bud. Zhu Liang was not the only one. For them, it was very easy to kill a genius, but once this genius grew up, it would not be that easy. They had to kill him as soon as possible. The head elder of the Sky Cloud Martial School slowly stood up. The inner disciple ranking competition has come to an end. Now, the rewards will be given out. The 7th to 10th place will be rewarded with 300 low-rank soul stones. The 4th to the 6th place will be rewarded with 600 low-rank soul stones. The 2nd to the 3rd place will be rewarded with 1,000 low-rank soul stones. The 1st place will be rewarded with 2,000 low-rank soul stones and a low-rank Earth Realm martial art. Besides these, according to the decision made by the Elder Council, the number 1 inner disciple will go to the Emerald Martial Palace with the congratulatory team on the 9th of July. Going to the Emerald Martial Palace, that is a place to broaden one's horizons. All the disciples who are able to go there are not simple. At that time, all the elite martial institutions will definitely gather there, such as the top 4 child, the top disciples among the core disciples. I'm afraid it will not be that easy. All the martial institutions will definitely compete with each other. I heard that the top 10 inner disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace are all as powerful as the core disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School. No wonder they decided to let Yi Qin go with them. Yeah, even if Yi Qin is not as powerful as them, with only his half-step sword intent, he will still be able to make the Sky Cloud Martial School look good. I see. How could the Elder Council's plan be hidden from the powerful figures who were always scheming against each other? Chapter 117. 2,000 low-rank soul stones and a low-rank Earth Realm martial art. If Yi Qin said he was not tempted, he would be lying. 2,000 low-rank soul stones would be worth 8 to 900,000 gold in the Northwest Auction House, and a low-rank Earth Realm martial art could be sold for millions of gold. Most of the small families in the Windy Nation might not be able to buy one, even if they sold all their assets. Of course, the potential of the number 1 inner disciple was indeed worth this price, and the martial institutions did not lack martial arts. After all, a martial institution that had hundreds of years of history, it would be unreasonable for them not to have some martial arts. However, Yi Qin also knew that even if an outsider offered 10 million gold, the top management of the martial institution would not agree to sell a martial art. Martial arts were not to be shared with outsiders. However, after hearing the latter part of the message, Yi Qin paused a bit. Follow the congratulatory team to the Emerald Martial Palace in 1 month? This was out of his expectation, but he did not care too much about it. Whether he went or not, it was all arranged by the top management. All he needed to do was to follow. The Silent Hills. In a vast mountain range, the fog never dissipated, and there was miasma everywhere. Deep in the mountains, there were often beast roars that could shake people's hearts. The sun was hanging high in the sky, and the golden light was blocked out by the fog. At first glance, there were colorful lights everywhere, bright and creepy. This was deep in the Silent Hills, and the natural yuan qi was especially rich. However, because of the miasma, warriors could not absorb it, or else they would go crazy. On a small hill that was split open by something, Yi Qin stood with his hands behind his back, with an ancient-looking long sword hanging on his waist. He looked down and saw that in the fog hundreds of meters away, 2 huge shadows were colliding with each other from time to time, making earth-shaking noises. Awoo! A horrifying roar was heard. Dozens of trees in front of him were knocked down, and a house-sized demonic wolf was blown towards him. The demonic wolf had no fur, and its body was covered with sharp thorns, which made its body 3 times bigger, and its blood-red pupils looked like it was about to drip blood. Bramble demonic wolf, top rank for beast. No matter how hard the wind blew, Yi Qin's body did not move. Only his clothes were fluttering. Dong, 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 dong. The ground shook, and a silver-gray demonic bull that was even bigger than the bramble demon wolf walked out of the mist step by step. Its cold and merciless eyes first locked on the bramble demon wolf, and then looked at where Yi-chun was. Moo! The silver-gray demonic bull roared into the sky, and the mist twisted violently. Electric currents appeared on the surface of the nearby, fallen leaves, burning them into nothingness. Yi-chun was slightly surprised. It was actually a rare silver electric demon bull. This was an existence even more dangerous than the bramble demon wolf. No wonder the bramble demon wolf couldn't beat it. The two demonic beasts were the size of a house. Their demonic aura soared to the sky, stirring up terrifying whirlwinds. 2 peak level, 4 demonic beasts should be good for training. If the others knew what Yi-chun was thinking, they would definitely say that he was just talking nonsense. Demonic beasts were already much more powerful than warriors of the same level. Even the most talented warrior might not be able to win against a demonic beast, not to mention 2 top-ranked 4 demonic beasts, which were equivalent to peak-level late condensing reality realm warriors. The bramble demon wolf looked at the silver electric demonic bull in fear. It lowered its body slightly. Its instinct told it that it had to kill any human that came in here. But the silver electric demonic bull in front of it was much more dangerous than this human. If it was not careful, it would be killed. Roar! 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 The bramble demon wolf roared at the silver electric demonic bull, as if it was sending some kind of message. After a while, the silver electric demonic bull let out an electric current from its nose. It stomped on the ground twice and unexpectedly rushed out. Shoo! The silver electric demonic bull's huge body did not slow it down. Like a thick silver electric light, it rushed towards Yi-chun, who was on the hill. At the same time, the bramble demon wolf also attacked Yi-chun. Its body rammed towards the hill. Piss off! Clang! The hidden cloud sword was unsheathed, and its momentum was unpredictable. It easily hit the silver electric demonic bull's body. The silver electric demonic bull's fierce eyes were filled with shock. Its huge body flew back, smashing many old vines that were full of ancient trees. Boom! The hill under its feet collapsed, and the bramble demon wolf jumped out from the rubble. It opened its mouth and spat out a cloud of black air mixed with ice. Yi-chun's feet lightly touched the rubble that had not yet fallen, and his body rose straight up. A sword chi, like a dragon from the 9 heavens, crazily shot down towards the bramble demon wolf. The bramble demon wolf was the same as the silver electric demonic bull. It did not expect Yi-chun's sword art to be so powerful. Its body flipped in the air and crashed into the flying boulders to avoid the sharp sword chi. Cloud impermanence, startling cloud. Where do you think you can hide? With one punch, the bramble demon wolf's black air was shattered by the fist energy. The countless ice cubes were shattered by the fist energy, turning into ice shards that sprinkled down from the sky. Below, the sword chi, which was originally moving in a straight line, twisted a few times. Unexpectedly, like the clouds in the sky, it had no form and slashed at the back of the bramble demon wolf. Crack! A few thorns were cut down, and the bramble demon wolf lost its balance and fell heavily on the ground, creating a huge pit. Crack! Silver lightning shot out from the side. It was the silver electric demonic bull that did not give up. Its speed was like lightning, and its sound was like thunder. It was as fast as lightning, burning the air in front of it into a vacuum. Startling cloud. Yi-chun waved out a thick sword chi in the air. The sword chi was extremely aggressive. Wherever it went, the air was swept away, filled with endless explosive power. The silver electric demonic bull opened its mouth and spat out a ball of lightning, which clashed with the sword chi. Crack! Crack! The lightning was all broken, and the sword chi slashed on the silver electric demonic bull's forehead, leaving a deep sword mark that could reach the bone, and blood was flowing out. In the next moment, the silver electric demon cow lost its balance and fell headfirst to the ground, causing it to shake incessantly. Even the electricity around its body leaked out, causing the burnt ground to crack and turn black. Clumps of fertile weeds were burned to ashes. Suddenly climbing up from the ground, the silver electro-demonic bull looked at Yi Chun with fear, not daring to attack again. Although its defense was very strong, it was not strong enough to ignore the sword chi. If it got hit too much, it would still be in danger. On the side, the bramble demon wolf could not help but lean towards the silver electro-demonic bull, as if it was ready to join forces with it to attack and kill this powerful human. Earthrealm low-rank sword art, indeed powerful. Lightly landing on an ancient tree, Yichen looked down at the sword body and thought to himself. It had been more than half a month since the end of the ranking competition. Half a month ago, Yichun chose a sword art from many Earthrealm low-rank martial arts, called the startling cloud sword art. The clouds were unpredictable, and so was the startling cloud sword art. Every movement was full of changes, and even the cultivator could not completely control it, not to mention the opponent. In addition, the startling cloud sword art was also a very aggressive sword art. Once the sword was thrown out, the wind would stop and the clouds would be startled. Its lethality was extremely horrifying, and it was many times more powerful and faster than the lone peak of 13 swords. After training it, Yi Chan went to the Silent Hills alone, wanting to test the power of the sword art on the beasts. This battle was indeed powerful. Chapter 118. Not far away, the silver electro-demonic cow and the bramble demon wolf roared at the same time, attacking towards Yi Chun from both sides. One of them was as fast as lightning, while the other one was as agile as a black smoke. Boom! The ancient tree was uprooted, and a huge amount of soil was sent flying in the air. Yi Chun jumped into the air and threw out a sword chi backhandedly. Puff! A deep sword mark appeared on the bramble demon wolf's back leg, and its body quickly fell onto the ground. It slid hundreds of meters away due to the inertia and finally stopped after hitting another ancient tree. Standing up, the bramble demon wolf shook its dizzy head and stared at Yi Chun with a slight fear in its eyes. This human didn't seem to be very powerful, but up until now, it and the silver electric demonic cow still couldn't do anything to him. Instead, it was covered in dust, and its back leg was injured. If this continued, it and the silver electric demonic cow would probably be killed before they could kill Yi Chun. The silver electric demonic cow also wanted to retreat, but the bramble demon wolf hadn't retreated yet. So how could it retreat? I have almost understood the power of the sky cloud sword art. Now it's time to take care of them. Before, Yi Chun didn't use his half-step sword intent, and those sword chi were only normal sword chi. Turning around, Yi Chun waved his sword twice, and two sword chi that had been infused with the half-step sword intent were thrown out. Puff! Puff! A sword hole appeared on the foreheads of the silver electric demonic cow and the bramble demon wolf, respectively. Their huge bodies fell heavily onto the ground and no longer breathing. Without the protection of the beast chi, the bodies of the demonic beasts weren't as hard as expected and were easily cut open. Inside each body was a bowl-sized pellet. The pellet of a top-rank 4 demonic beast was worth over 10,000 gold and was put into Yi Chun's storage ring by Yi Chun. After that, some valuable demonic beast materials were also collected by Yi Chun. After that, Yi Chun stood up straight and looked at the deepest part of the Silent Hills. That was a true forbidden area. A few decades ago, a powerful force had sent experts to the depths to search for some rare and precious herbs. Unfortunately, they encountered a level 7 demonic beast, the ghost-faced demonic cow. Out of more than 100 people, only one person managed to escape, but he died a few days later. The reason was that the demonic chi in his body was too strong, and he died of madness. Since then, no one dared to enter. A rank 7 demonic beast. Yi Chun could not imagine it at all, since it was equivalent to an astral reaching realm warrior. Not to mention Yi Chun, even the leaders of the top 5 martial institutions would not be able to handle a single attack from it. But it was hard to say whether it was true or not, since besides the rumors, no one had actually seen it with their own eyes. The only survivor from decades ago had already gone insane when he came out. Shaking his head, Yi Chun leaned to the side and leaped onto an ancient tree that was over 100 feet tall. With a few flashes, he disappeared without a trace. Not long after Yi Chen left, a figure shot through the mist. Pap! Lightly stepping on the ground, the middle-aged man saw the two demonic beast corpses lying on the ground. He couldn't help but curse. I finally found out where this brat went. Who would have thought that he would go to the deepest part of the Silent Hills? The mist here is so thick that people can't even look at it directly. You can't tell anything from 100 steps away. Otherwise, how could I let him leave safely? I would have killed him on the spot. This man was indeed Zhu Liang, the middle-aged man who had watched the Inner Disciple ranking competition of the Sky Cloud Martial School half a month ago. At the same time, he was also the intelligence master of the Purple Sun Martial School. He had sent his warriors to guard the bottom of the Windy Mountain, ready to kill Yi Chen the moment he went out alone. However, after Yi Chen went down the mountain, he went straight into the Silent Hills. By the time Zhu Liang heard the news, it was already too late. He could only follow and try his luck to see if he could run into Yi Chen. Brat, you sure are lucky. But next time, you will die for sure. Zhu Liang's eyes were filled with killing intent. Roar! Right at this moment, a majestic roar sounded. Following that, the sky suddenly darkened. Dark clouds covered the sky, covering the radiance of the fiery sun. Such a powerful beast chi. It is at least a level 6 beast. Zhu Liang's face was full of fear. He hurried to run away. Far away, a beam of black light that was as thick as a water bucket shot out. Along the way, trees collapsed and mountains were pierced. The aftermath of the black light swept out a deep ravine that extended straight into the earth. The speed of the black light was too fast. Zhu Liang had no time to dodge. He roared, and a burning light suddenly rose from his body, protecting him tightly. Boom! The burning light was shattered. Zhu Liang was bleeding from every orifice, and his clothes were torn. Little bastard, this beast must have been provoked by you. Zhu Liang came without a sound, so he did not attract any beast's attention. Thinking about it, he realized that the battle between Yi Chen and the beast was too loud, and it had attracted more powerful beasts from the deeper parts of the Silent Hills. Zhu Liang had become the scapegoat. Without caring about his wounded body, Zhu Liang pushed his Zhen Qi as hard as he could. His body turned into a burning light and shot far away. At the same time, he threw a dark red pellet into his mouth. After a while, the source of the black light finally appeared in the distance. Its huge body was standing in the middle of the hills. It was tens of meters tall, and it was a huge black python. If the mist was gone, people would see a shocking scene from the sky. A ravine stretched from dozens of miles away to here. In other words, the black light was shot from dozens of miles away. Such a terrifying range was unheard of. If it was a little closer, whether Zhu Liang could survive or not would be a problem. After all, the attack power of the black light would definitely be reduced if it was too far away. Seeing that the aura had disappeared, the black python bumped the mountain next to it with its huge head. The mountain shook a few times, and a few huge cracks appeared on the wall, making a cracking sound. Lowering its towering upper body, the giant black python slithered back in the direction it came from, crushing ancient trees one after another. Among the thousands of mountains, there was a magnificent valley. The valley was full of trees, and there were lakes of different sizes, just like the stars in the sky. In a yard next to a lake, 3 young girls were sitting and chatting. Sister G, have you heard about the Inner Disciple ranking competition that was held in the Sky Cloud Martial School half a month ago? The round-faced girl in green clothes suddenly asked. The beautiful girl with an aloof temperament said indifferently, "Is that so? I don't think there is anyone worth paying attention to in the Sky Cloud Martial School." The pretty girl next to her nodded and said, "The Sky Cloud Martial School is ranked last among the top 5 martial institutions. The top 10 inner disciples are only as powerful as the inner disciples of our Emerald Martial Palace. And the top 10 inner disciples of our Emerald Martial Palace are only as powerful as the core disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School." The round-faced girl said, "I heard that there are 2 geniuses in this year's Sky Cloud Martial School. One is called Meng Chong, and the other is called Yi Chen. They are both at the top of the core disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School. Yi Chun, the beautiful girl, and the pretty girl looked at the round-faced girl in surprise. The round-faced girl asked confusedly, "What's wrong?" The pretty girl asked, "How is that Yi Chun? He beat Meng Chong, who was the top 10 inner disciples in the last year's Sky Cloud Martial School, and won the first place. I heard that he is very powerful." The beautiful girl was slightly surprised, but she didn't care about it anymore. So what if he was the top 10 inner disciples in the Sky Cloud Martial School? She was now one of the 4 core disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace. There was no comparison between them. The round-faced girl continued that Yi Chun is not only very powerful, but he has also mastered the half-step sword intent. Right now, everyone in the Windy Nation is talking about him. What? The pretty girl and the beautiful girl couldn't believe it. They subconsciously thought that the two of them only had the same name and could not be the Yi Chun they knew. Chapter 119. Days passed by. When there were only 10 days left until the 9th of July, Yi Chun felt a bit strange. Why hadn't the higher-ups prepared to go to the Emerald Martial Palace yet? The Emerald Martial Palace was 70,000 miles away from the Sky Cloud Martial School. Even if he rode the half-beast horse, the ghost-eyed jade lion, it would still take him 13 to 14 days to get there. Just like that, another 5 days passed. Yi Chun didn't care about going to the Emerald Martial Palace anymore. Since the higher-ups weren't in a hurry, why should he? The Emerald Martial Palace was not a place he wanted to go. The 7th of July, Yi Chun was training his Zhanqi in the yard. He was only one step away from the late condensing reality realm. Although it was impossible for him to make a breakthrough in a short period of time, he still wanted to give it a try. After all, for him, the difference between the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm and the late condensing reality realm was too huge. At least if he could reach the same cultivation level, he would be able to compete with all the young warriors, even if he had to face young Master North Snow or young Master Dwamu. Crack! The low-rank soul stone in his hand cracked into 2 pieces. Yi Chun opened his eyes with a regretful look on his face. With his current cultivation level, it was still too difficult for him to make a breakthrough. It would still take him a while to reach the late condensing reality realm. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Yi Chun thought it was Wu Zoming, so he yelled, "Coming!" Opening the door of the yard, a young man that Yi Chun had never seen before appeared in front of him, wearing black clothes. "I am the executor disciple. The head elder asked me to inform you that it is time to go to the Emerald Martial Palace. Go to the welcoming plaza now," the young man said indifferently. Yi Chun was surprised. "Go now. Can I get there in 2 days?" Shaking his head, Yi Chun didn't understand, so he responded, "All right, I will go now." The executor disciple left. Yi Chun went back to his room, prepared a few sets of clothes and some necessities, then cleaned the room a bit, closed the door, and walked to the welcoming plaza. On the grand and flat welcoming plaza, 4 people were standing there. The 2 people in the middle were the first elder, who was over 60 years old, and the 4th elder, who had a sturdy body. The sense of power released from their bodies was as deep as the ocean. One of them was Luo Han's Han, who was wearing a blue robe, and the other one was Su Jing, who was wearing a white robe. "Great Elder, 4th Elder." Yi Chun saluted the 2 elders. The great elder smiled and said, "Yi Chun, have you made any progress this month?" Hearing him, a smile also appeared on the 4th elder's face. They had already heard about how fast Yi Chun had improved. 1 year ago, he was still a mortal realm stage 6 warrior, and now he had already reached the peak of mid-condensing reality realm. Not to mention that he had a great comprehensive ability. He had mastered all the martial arts he had learned to the highest level. Bringing him to the Emerald Martial Palace this time was more or less to gain some phase for the Sky Cloud Martial School. Otherwise, it would have been better to bring other core disciples. After all, compared to the top 5 core disciples, Yi Chun's foundation was still a bit weak. Yi Chun said, "I haven't made much progress in my cultivation, but I've just learned the shocking cloud swordsmanship." "You can't rush to raise your cultivation." "What? You've learned the shocking cloud swordsmanship?" The 4th elder slightly nodded. Then he was shocked and stared at Yi Chun in shock. Yi Chun nodded. He didn't need to hide this kind of thing. Not to mention, with the attention he was getting now, he wouldn't be able to keep it a secret for too long. Lu Hanzhan was shocked. Learning the shocking cloud swordsmanship in only a month? What kind of abnormal martial arts talent was this? The shocking cloud swordsmanship was a low-rank, Earth Realm sword art. Ordinary people might not even be able to learn it in 5 years. If it were Lu Hanzhan himself, it would take him at least half a year. In the entire Sky Cloud Martial School, perhaps only Zhu Mei could learn it in 3 to 4 months. However, compared to Yichun, the gap was not just a little bit, it was double or triple. The Great Elder couldn't believe it. Martial artists who have learned the shocking cloud swordsmanship will have a strong shocking cloud sword aura when they are fighting. He didn't continue his words, because Yichun's temperament suddenly changed. Wave after wave of illusory sword aura gushed out. His whole body seemed like a treasured sword that had been unsheathed. His sword aura was unstable, but it was filled with a horrifying explosive power. It is indeed the shocking cloud swordsmanship. I can't believe he can use it so easily. The Great Elder gasped in shock. He realized that he had underestimated Yichun after all. However, he couldn't blame himself, because a genius who had mastered the half-step sword intent was not someone he could easily guess. Among the three of them, only Su Jing didn't seem to be surprised. Caw! At this moment, a high-pitched bird song came from the top of the windy mountain. The bird song was short and high-pitched, along with a majestic aura. Yichun looked towards the direction of the sound and was surprised. On the precipitous peak, a giant bird swooped down. This giant bird had a majestic physique, and its wingspan was more than 10 meters. Its entire body was covered in dark green feathers, and under the sunlight, it glowed with a metallic luster. Its pair of claws could easily grab a house, and they were curved like an anchor. Lu Hanzhan introduced the bird to Yichun. This is the guardian spirit beast of our Sky Cloud Martial School. Wind Vulture. Wind Vulture? Yichun had heard of this name before. In the easternmost area of the Windy Nation, there was a great devil grassland. There were countless demonic beasts living on the grassland, among which the half-demon horse, the ghost-eyed jade lion, was the most famous one. However, people living near the grassland didn't think so. In their eyes, the most famous demonic beast was the king of the great devil grassland, the 5th-level Wind Vulture. The Wind Vulture could travel over 40,000 miles per day. It was as fast as lightning and was over 10 times faster than a half-demon horse. It was perfect for traveling, but it was not easy to catch it. Although it was only a 5th-level demonic beast, which was equivalent to a mid-clasping Yuan realm martial artist, even a late-clasping Yuan realm martial artist might not be able to catch up with it. Besides, even if a late-clasping Yuan realm martial artist managed to catch it, it would be extremely difficult to tame it. Yichun didn't expect that the Sky Cloud Martial School had a 5th-level Wind Vulture. No wonder they weren't in a hurry to go to the Emerald Martial School. With the Wind Vulture's speed, it would only take them 2 days to get there. Not only would it save them a lot of time and effort, it would also show the school's prestige. Whoosh! A fierce gust of wind blew, and the Wind Vulture landed in the middle of the plaza. The head elder said, "Come on up." After saying that, the head elder flashed across the air and landed on the Wind Vulture's broad and flat back. When everyone had boarded the Wind Vulture, the head elder reminded them, "Hold on, the Wind Vulture is very fast." Luo Hanzhan grinned and said, "Head elder is right. The first time I rode on the Wind Vulture, I almost fell from the sky. It's unbelievably fast." Hearing this, Yichun and Su Jing didn't dare to be careless. They both silently activated their Jinqi. Whoosh! Whoosh! The Wind Vulture fiercely flapped its wings for a few times, then suddenly leaped up into the air like a sharp arrow. The Wind Vulture's wings were tucked behind its back to reduce the air resistance. The speed of the Wind Vulture, which was close to the sound barrier, was unimaginably fast. As if it was riding on a rocket, the air that was blowing towards its face was no different than a sharp knife, cutting its skin. Yichun planted his feet on the ground and activated his protective Jinqi to protect his face from the knife-like air currents. Soon, the Wind Vulture flew high up into the clouds, flying far away. Chapter 120. Above the ocean of clouds, The winged vulture flapped its wings and flew hundreds of meters away. The shrill, long-lasting sonic booms behind it didn't reach anyone's ears, because the wind vulture's flying speed had already surpassed the speed of sound. The head elder and the fourth elder were standing in front of the wind eagle's back like two towering mountains, relieving most of the pressure on Yi Chun and the other two. Otherwise, only the strong airflow caused by the supersonic speed of the eagle could easily blow them away and make them fall from the sky. Brother Yi, you have to be mentally prepared for this trip to the Emerald Martial Palace. I believe you also know why the higher-ups want you to come with us. Su Jing abruptly used her Jinqi to talk to Yi Chun. Yi Chun nodded. Why isn't senior sister Zhumei here? None of the head disciples from the top 4 martial institutions will go there, unless one of them has reached the clasping Yuan realm and is on par with young Master Emerald. I see. Yi Chun thought for a while and realized that Zhumei was right. If Zhumei went, she would inevitably be compared with young Master Emerald. But now, she didn't want to go. So, everyone could only compare the second disciples of each martial institution. Just then, the fourth elder said to Yi Chun and the other two with his Jinqi, "There's a large number of flesh demons in front of us. Be careful not to get sucked into them." Flesh demon? Yi Chun froze for a second. This was a kind of demonic beast that floated in the air without any intelligence. It was shaped like a huge meatball and had a lot of scary-looking mouths. Normally, 3 mouths would be a rank 1 meat beast, 6 mouths would be a rank 2 meat beast, 9 mouths would be a rank 3 meat beast, and so on and so forth. Flesh demons usually lived by inhaling and exhaling the chi of heaven and earth. Occasionally, they would eat meat. Before he could think about it, disgusting meatballs appeared in the vast sea of clouds in front of him. These meatballs were brownish-red in color, and their bodies were covered with mouths with sharp teeth. The largest one was no different from a small mountain, and the smallest one was the size of a water buffalo. They floated in the air with the wind, and if a flying beast passed by, they would open their mouths and release a terrifying suction force, swallowing it into their stomachs. Sky Burning Palm. The wind vulture was incredibly fast. Seeing that it was about to break into the group of meat spirit beasts, the fourth elder let out a resonant growl and pushed his palm out. Rumble. A large number of flesh demons exploded and were burned into nothingness. The shockwave even tore a large hole in the sea of clouds. Yi Chun was secretly shocked. Late clasping Yuan realm martial artists are indeed extraordinary. Every single move of theirs has the destructive power to destroy mountains. Suddenly, the wind vulture swayed intensely and slowed down. A few of them turned their heads to look. Unbeknownst to them, a meatball the size of a small hill had appeared on their right rear. The largest mouth on the meatball was wide open, sucking in the air and the sea of clouds in a spiral. It was like a huge bottomless pit, swallowing everything. Yi Chun and the other two had low cultivation bases, so they were about to be sucked out. The first elder made his move. He raised the index and middle fingers of his right hand and drew a line in the air. Puchi, a purplish-golden ray of light, extended out. It was as sharp as a blade, and it split the meatball into 2. The cut was smooth, without a trace of roughness. The fourth elder said in admiration, "A 5th-grade meat beast defensive power is even more terrifying than a real mountain. It seems that your purple light finger has already reached the highest level. It can cut a mountain as if it was nothing." Ah, it took me over 10 years to reach the highest level of this mid-rank Earth Realm finger art. I can't compare with you. The first elder gave a bitter smile. Yi Chun was speechless. The first elder was obviously talking about him. Hearing him, the fourth elder was speechless again. He had seen all kinds of geniuses, but he had never seen a genius who could learn a low-rank Earth Realm martial art within a month. What a freak! Above another piece of sea of clouds, a hazy white light flashed like a bolt of lightning. It seemed to be able to travel a mile within a blink of an eye. If one looked carefully, one would be able to see that the white light was actually a huge white bird. The white bird had a strong and muscular body, with a pair of dark yellow claws under its belly. There were 4 people standing on the back of the white bird. The leading 2 were over 40 years old. They were wearing white robes with golden edges and snowflake patterns on the cuffs. Behind the two were two young men. The one on the left had a strong and muscular build. He was a head taller than the two in front. His eyes were extremely sharp and aggressive, as if he was being attacked by a heavy blade. The one on the right looked ordinary, wearing white robes. If he was thrown into a crowd, it would be hard to find him. However, when one looked at his eyes, one would feel that he was not ordinary at all. His pure, crystal-like eyes gave people a soul-stirring feeling. The blade light seemed to be invisible. It seemed to be able to transform into the blade intent. It was indeed the North Snow Quick Blade Lynch. As for the strong and muscular teenager, he was the second core disciple of the North Snow Martial Academy, Blade UU. We, the North Snow Martial Academy, never liked to fight. But even though we don't like to fight, it's still a shame to fall behind others. You two have to work hard. The middle-aged man on the right reminded them with a smile on his face. Yu chuckled and said, I admit that I am no match for Zhuang Fei. But except for him, Yu, am not afraid of anyone in the younger generation of the Windy Nation. At this moment, the bearded middle-aged man, who seemed to be the leader of the group, sighed and said, In recent years, the North Snow Martial Academy has started to lose its strength. There haven't been any outstanding geniuses appearing in the ranking competitions of the inner disciples. However, the Sky Cloud Martial School is quite lucky. They actually have a disciple who has mastered the half-step sword intent. Lynch's eyes lit up. He was believed by the leader of the group, Shui Warren, to be the one who had the highest chance of mastering the blade intent. Now that he knew that there was a disciple who had mastered the half-step sword intent and was only one step away from mastering the real sword intent, he was a bit excited. The rain was pouring down. A loach-like black-scaled demonic beast was swimming in the sea of clouds. Every time it lurked and reappeared, it would be several hundred meters away. Coupled with its huge body and terrifying appearance, ordinary people would think that a legendary evil dragon had appeared in the world and was going to harm the human world. Junior Sister Yuan, you made great progress in the past few months. Otherwise, we wouldn't have asked you to come with us to the Emerald Martial Palace. There were 5 people standing on the beast's head. A young man with an umbrella said to the tall girl with a smile. The tall girl had a pretty face and a pair of straight and long legs. If Yichun were here, he would definitely recognize her. She was indeed Yuan Xiumei, who had helped the Ling family with the mission. Compared to a few months ago, her qi was much more powerful. Obviously, she had made great progress. Yuan Xiumei smiled lightly and said, I think the elders want me to see the world. Plus, following Brother Nangong will definitely not be a bad thing. How come all the female disciples of the Rudra Martial School are so talkative? I'm the only one who is dumb. The young man with the umbrella said sarcastically. Yuan Xiumei laughed. Caw! From afar, an ear-piercing beast roar came out, shaking the sea of clouds. The elder of the Rudra Martial School, who was standing in the front, raised his head and looked over, but couldn't see anything. He murmured to himself, It should be the double-headed Bat King from the Purple Sun Martial School. It is quite fast. A few hundred miles away from the black-scaled demon beast, a black-red two-headed bat with a wingspan of more than 10 meters swept across the sky. On the back of the bat, 4 people were standing. One of them was Ouyang Ming, who had a conflict with Yi Chun in the Northwest Auction House. Beside him was a short and skinny teenager, who looked very ordinary, even a bit ugly, which formed a sharp contrast with Ouyang Ming. Piercing through the sea of clouds, the 4 of them rushed towards the southwest. Chapter 121, July 8th afternoon. The winged vulture darted out of the clouds and lowered its speed to below the speed of sound. Yichun only felt his vision brighten, and the mountains and rivers below were all imprinted in his eyes. But very quickly he was dumbfounded. In the area of 500 kilometers below, the mountain peaks rose and fell without end. Some were lofty and majestic, some were verdant and elegant, some were shaped like dragons, and some were crouching like tigers. The dense energy of heaven and earth converged into a thin layer of mist that coiled around the peaks of the mountain peaks. and it gave off a special feeling of immortality. Between the mountains were lakes of various sizes. Looking down from above, the smallest of the lakes was only the size of a fingernail. They were scattered all over the place, and they were of various colors. At a glance, it was impossible to tell how many there were. In the center of this area, dozens of precipitous mountain peaks converged to form a valley. The color of the valley was dark green, like the primordial jadeite formed by heaven and earth, exquisite without losing its grandeur. Looking inside, there were hundreds of lakes of various sizes in the valley. Buildings were built around the lakes in an orderly fashion, contrasting with the environment outside the valley, forming a large and a small scene. What a wonderful place! Yichun opened his mouth and spat out these words. Luo Hanzan explained to Yichun, there are a total of 1,332 mountains and 9,800 lakes around the Emerald Martial Palace, which is known as the 1,000 Mountains and 10,000 Rivers. Apart from this, on the mountains that form the Emerald Martial Palace, there's a kind of stone called fragrant jade, which emits a nice aroma all year round, and is called jade fragrance. Combining these two, it becomes the famous 1,000 Mountains and 10,000 Rivers, jade fragrance. Once the martial artists from the Windy Nation and even other nations mention this name, they will definitely think of the rank 7 martial institution, the Emerald Martial Palace. Yichun praised, thousands of mountains and tens of thousands of rivers. Jadeite fragrance lingers. It really makes one daydream. The head elder snorted coldly and said, it is indeed a paradise, but the Emerald Martial Palace is only a latecomer. 3,000 years ago, the rank 6 martial institution, Mountain and Water Pavilion, used to occupy this place. That's right. Back then, the Emerald Martial Palace was just a small, unranked martial institution. The first leader of the Emerald Martial Palace accidentally found the ruins of the Mountain and Water Pavilion and found the incomplete, great art of mountain and water from there. He trained hard for more than 10 years, and once he was born, he became famous in the martial world and built a solid foundation for the Emerald Martial Palace. The fourth elder's voice was filled with envy and passion. It was a remnant of the great art of landscape. It seemed to be very powerful. Yichun thought. The wind vulture flew over thousands of mountains and rivers, arriving at the entrance of the Emerald Valley. The entrance of the valley had a radius of hundreds of zhang, and the terrain was flat. Quite a few famous warriors had entered the valley in groups, and some important ones had also come on the back of their beasts, just like the Sky Cloud Martial School. But of course, the mounts of their beasts were obviously not as good as the wind vultures. The wind vulture landed on the ground along with a fierce gale. An outer elder of the Emerald Martial Palace walked up to them with 4 deacons. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for not going out to greet you. The head elder let the wind vulture move freely, then grinned and said, it seems that we've arrived first. Haha, the Sky Cloud Martial School has been very high profile recently. You're number 1 in everything, but what's the point of fighting for number 1 in small matters? The double-headed giant bat flew over quickly, and the middle-aged man in the lead opened his mouth and said. The fourth elder's face was filled with displeasure. The middle-aged man's name was Zhu Li, and he was about the same age as the first elder. Because he practiced a special cultivation technique, he looked to be in his 40s, and his chi and blood were vigorous. Taking a deep breath, the fourth elder raised his voice and said, I didn't believe it at first. It turns out that people from the Purple Sun Martial House all have loud voices. I heard your roar from tens of miles away. Having a loud voice isn't a bad thing. I'm just afraid that some people don't have the energy to shout loudly. The two-headed bat landed on the ground. Julie took the lead and walked down. Look, the Sky Cloud Martial School and the Purple Sun Martial School are arguing again. Among the top 5 martial institutions, the Purple Sun Martial School and the Sky Cloud Martial School have the most grievances. I heard that when the Sky Cloud Martial School was encircling the remaining forces of the 9 evil cult, the Purple Sun Martial School set up a trap for the Sky Cloud Martial School, causing a lot of powerful martial artists of the Sky Cloud Martial School to suffer heavy casualties. After a few years, the Sky Cloud Martial School was reduced to a rank 9 martial institution. However, the Sky Cloud Martial School was not a force to be trifled with. They released fake news and tricked the previous leader of the Purple Sun Martial School to the place where the remaining forces of the 9 evil cult gathered, causing him to die without a complete corpse. There's such a secret. No wonder the two forces have always been like fire and water. Many people nearby were discussing in low voices. Normally, people from the Emerald Martial Palace would be happy to see the two forces fighting each other to the death. However, this was the territory of the Emerald Martial Palace, and tomorrow was the celebration banquet. If they really let them fight, the Emerald Martial Palace would lose all of its face. A few outer elders of the Emerald Martial Palace hurriedly said, "Your accommodations have been prepared. Please follow us." Huh. Zhuli flicked his sleeves and left. Ouyang Ming, who was behind him, threw a meaningful glance at Yi Chun. On the other side, the head elder's anger disappeared. He said to Yi Chun and the others, "Let's go." After the two groups of people had left, it suddenly started raining. The black-scaled beast carried the people from the Rudra Martial School to this place. Inside the Emerald Martial Palace, numerous lakes appeared in front of them, all calm and peaceful. The Emerald Martial Palace is indeed a rank 7 martial institution. It is indeed a beautiful place. Wow, compared to this place, my place is like a mountain, totally not at the same level. The lotuses in the lake are all precious herbs, the green lotus. And those fishes, they're all rare ancient fishes. Hearing people's praises, Yi Chun had to admit that in terms of environment, the windy mountain of the Sky Cloud Martial School was miles ahead of the Emerald Martial Palace. It was not even worth mentioning. He wondered how the environment of the North Snow Martial Academy, which was also a rank 7 martial institution, would be. There were many people who came to congratulate the Emerald Martial Palace. Those who did not have much influence were basically arranged to stay near the lakes in the outer area of the Emerald Martial Palace, where there were many beautiful courtyards. Those who had some influence were arranged to stay in the inner area, where the environment was much better. As one of the top 5 martial institutions, the Sky Cloud Martial School was arranged to stay in the innermost area, which was close to the main buildings of the Emerald Martial Palace. On the road between the lakes, Yi Chun inadvertently glanced over, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. In front of him, a group of young men and women in green robes were talking and laughing. Judging from the Zhenqi vibration, they were not any weaker than the top-ranked inner disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School. 2 of them were releasing immeasurable Zhenqi, which meant that they had obviously reached the level of the top-ranked core disciples of the Sky Cloud Martial School. The one on the left had a graceful figure and an extremely beautiful appearance, like an orchid in a deserted valley. Her every move attracted the thoughts of the male disciples. Standing next to her was a tall and straight male disciple. He was handsome and had a noble temperament. There was a faint aura of a king on his body. He was obviously not an ordinary person. Luo Hanzhan, who was standing beside Yi Chun, recognized the beautiful girl. She was Ji Xuyan, who had accompanied the Palm and Lu Wuxiang to visit the Sky Cloud Martial School half a year ago. She was a disciple of the Ji family, and, judging from what had happened that day, she seemed to be closely related to Yi Chun. "Brother Yi, we have arrived at our place. Let's go." Luo Hanzhan patted on Yi Chun's shoulder. Yi Chun took back his sight. His expression didn't change at all. Led by an outer elder of the Emerald Martial Palace, the 5 of them walked towards the luxurious yard beside the huge lake. From afar, Ji Xuyan saw that familiar silhouette and slightly frowned. The tall and handsome male disciple standing beside her asked with concern, "Sister Ji, what's wrong?" "Nothing, brother, sure." Ji Xuyan was sure that that man was Yi Chun. She didn't expect that after half a year, who was only at Mortal Realm Stage 6, had already reached such a high level. If that was all, she wouldn't have been too surprised. But what she didn't expect was that besides the rapid improvement of his cultivation, he had also mastered the half-step sword intent, which was the dream of every sword artist. In just a couple of days, the name Yi Chun had spread across the entire Windy Nation. Among all the martial artists, there wasn't a single person who didn't know about him. His fame had even caught up with the top and second disciples of all the top martial institutions. Chapter 122. The luxurious yard was called the Green Willow House. It had a main yard and 7 small yards. Yichin lived in the small yard on the east side. Obviously, the yard had been thoroughly cleaned. There was not a single leaf on the ground, the corners were clean, and the flowers in the small garden in the middle had also been carefully trimmed. Entering the room, Yichun saw that the tables and chairs were all shiny and clean and had a faint aroma. After looking around for a while, Yichun walked out. When he walked past Su Jing's yard, he heard a thunderous sound coming from inside. Yichun smiled. Su Jing had always been a quiet girl. She would only cultivate when she had nothing to do. She rarely took the initiative to communicate with others. After their last meeting, Su Jing only nodded to greet Yichun. Without disturbing her, Yichun started to walk away. Outside the yard was a sparkling lake. Every 100 meters around the lake, there was a yard that was as luxurious as the Green Willow House. Beside the lake, rows of willows were planted. The willows were touching the water surface, swaying along with the breeze. The Emerald Martial Palace is indeed a rank 7 institution. Even the place they use to receive their guests is so beautiful. Yichun took a deep breath. He felt that the natural yuan qi around him was much richer and purer than in the Windy Mountain. It was also easier to convert it into zhen qi. After enjoying the view for a while, Yichun was about to go back to his yard to cultivate. Yichun, a tall girl, walked towards him along the lake. It was Yuan Xiumei from the Ritter Martial School. Yichun smiled. Long time no see. How did you know I was here? Guests from influential institutions all live beside this lake. I saw you when I walked out of the yard. Yuan Xiumei stopped 3 meters in front of Yichun. Yichun nodded, then suddenly said in surprise, "You have reached the late condensing reality realm. Congratulations." "There's nothing to congratulate me about. You, on the other hand, have improved a bit too fast. Not only have you reached the peak of the mid-condensing reality realm in just a few months, you have also managed to comprehend the half-step sword intent, which even I am jealous of. Sigh, comparisons are always odious." Yuan Xiumei said with admiration and admiration. Yichun rubbed his nose. The news travels fast. Of course. Yuan Xiumei rolled her eyes at Yichun and said, "Everything else is fine, but the fact that you've already comprehended the half-step sword intent is way too shocking. Even the leader of our Ritter Martial School had praised you as a top genius, a rare sword artist from the Windy Nation, and that you have a great chance to comprehend the true sword intent. You didn't call me just to praise me, did you?" Hearing him, Yuan Xiumei looked at Yichun with hope and said, "How did you master the half-step sword intent? Do you have any experience to share with me?" Just like Yichun, she was the #1 inner disciple of the Ritter Martial School. Her fighting power was no weaker than ordinary core disciples. If she could master a little bit of the sword intent, her power would definitely increase. Besides, if she could master a little bit of the sword intent, it would be much easier for her to step into the next level. Originally, she didn't have any plans, but the person who was closest to mastering the sword intent was Yichun. So it was better to ask him than to try and figure it out herself. Yichun smiled bitterly in his mind. So she came here for the sword intent. I don't really know much about the sword intent, but if you want to talk about experience, I do have some. Tell me about it. Yuan Xiumei's eyes lit up. Yichun said, "The spirit, qi, and soul are perfectly merged into one point under the control of nature, and then released in the form of a sword. I think this should be the initial form of the sword intent." Of course, Yichun wouldn't say too much. In his words, there were not only the ancient explanations, but also his own thoughts. All in all, it was ambiguous and mysterious. Yuan Xiumei was lost in her thoughts. After a long while, she came back to her senses and said with a happy face, "Thank you so much. I can feel that the sword intent has become much clearer in my mind. Maybe I can really figure it out. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about this." Even if Yichun didn't care about it, she wouldn't say it out loud. Everyone was selfish. If one less person could master the sword intent, they would feel superior. Yichun was surprised. Is it really that easy to understand? However, What he did not know was that the true spirit continent was full of martial arts, and there were a lot of things that were hard to understand. Compared to that, what he said was already very easy to understand. At least for Yuan Xiaomei, Yi-chan was already a powerful person in her heart. I can't take advantage of you for nothing. This is a sword manual. I found it by accident. Although it's very ordinary and doesn't have much value, it could be used as a guide for sword artists. Yuan Xiaomei took out a thin book from her storage ring and handed it to Yi-chan. Yi-chan took it and took a look. On the cover of the book, there were 2 ancient characters, sword manual. All right, I'll go back and try to understand it. Yuan Xiaomei immediately said goodbye. She was afraid that if she stayed here for too long, that trace of understanding would disappear. Watching Yuan Xiaomei's back as she left, Yi-chan put away the sword manual and went back to the Green Willow House. Deep inside the main building of the Emerald Martial Palace, next to a crescent-shaped lake. The courtyard here was different from other places. It was tall, large, and magnificent. It was built with precious stones and covered a large area. Sister Ji, don't you want to come in and have a seat? Outside the courtyard, a male disciple with a noble aura asked Ji Shuyan to stay. Ji Shuyan shook her head and said, "No, Brother Sure, I'll go first." After saying that, she turned around and left. The male disciple, who was called Brother Sure, had a bad look on his face. He punched a huge hole in the thick wall of the courtyard without using any Jin Qi. "Brother Sure, I'm Cui Shiming." At this moment, footsteps came from behind. The male disciple with a noble aura turned around, frowned, and said, "What are you doing here?" It was Cui Shiming, who was 17 or 18 years old and was quite handsome. He was the one who had lost to Yi-chan before. He forced a smile. He was a bit scared of the man in front of him. This man was not an ordinary core disciple. He was one of the top 4 core disciples of the Emerald Martial Palace, the stone man Shi Patian. He was as powerful as the extreme palm Lu Wuxiang, and was only second to the young Master Emerald, who had already stepped into the clasping Yuan realm. "Brother Shi, are you interested in Ji Shuyan?" Cui Shiming smiled and asked. Shi Potion's face darkened. "Don't get involved in things that you shouldn't get involved in. Otherwise, don't blame me for being cruel." Cui Shiming hurriedly said, "Brother Shi, you misunderstood me. Why would I get involved in your business? I wouldn't dare to do that." "Then what do you mean?" "Brother Shi, do you know about Yi-chan?" "I do. Isn't he the famous Sky Cloud Martial School disciple who has comprehended the half-step sword intent? What does he have to do with him?" Cui Shiming said in a low voice. "Brother Shi, you still don't know about it, do you? The one who is engaged to Ji Shuyan is Yi-chan." "It's him." Shi Patian indeed knew that Ji Shuyan was engaged to Yi-chan, but it was cancelled later. However, he didn't know who it was. Indeed, Yi-chan is the one who was engaged to Ji Shuyan. Back then, he was still a useless cultivator and was not even noticed by Ji Shuyan. But now, that useless cultivator has become a genius who has comprehended the half-step sword intent. It's hard to say that Ji Shuyan won't be interested in him. Chapter 123. Hearing him, Shi Patian recalled that 2 hours ago, Ji Shuyan's expression had obviously changed. She must have seen that disciple from the Sky Cloud Martial School named Yi-chan. Thinking about the fact that these two used to be engaged, Shi Patian could not help but feel jealous and angry. The woman he loved would never be allowed to have any relationship with anyone else, even if that relationship was no longer there. He would still be very unhappy. This Yi-chan, he needed to teach him a lesson. Looking at Cui Shiming, Shi Patian asked, "Do you have a grudge against Yi-chan?" Cui Shiming's face showed a ferocious expression. "This guy is evil and cunning. He defeated me and made me lose face in front of my junior sister Yi-xian." He had liked Yi-xian for a long time. Their relationship was quite good before, but ever since he had been beaten by Yi-chan, she would only greet him coldly whenever she saw him, which was a huge blow to his self-esteem. He wished he could go back in time and kill Yi-chan until there was nothing left of him. Shi Patian sneered. Obviously, Yi-xian wasn't telling the truth, but he didn't want to expose him. "You can leave now," Shi Patian said. Cui Shiming was confused. "Brother Shi, are we just going to let him go like this?" "Let him go. Dream on." Tomorrow, during the celebration banquet, the disciples of the major sects will compare notes with each other. At that time, I will challenge him and make him lose face in front of everyone. It will be best if I can make him lose his mind. In this way, I can justifiably cripple him. If it was possible, Shurpatian wanted to kill Yi Chun right now. With his power, he could still do it. The so-called half-step sword intent was not even worth mentioning in front of absolute power. Chui Shiming was startled by Assure Potion's tone. He thought about all the people who had gone against him in the past, who were either killed or crippled, unable to continue their cultivation for the rest of their lives. Chui Shiming could not help but feel happy. Yi Chun, if you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too famous and making me lose face in front of Sister Yixian. Once you become a cripple, I will treat you well. After Chui Shiming left, Shurpatian murmured to himself, Junior Sister Ji, I will let you know that a loser will always be a loser. Even if you have comprehended the half-step sword intent, you are still a loser in front of me. Humph. The night came and the stars shone brightly. Every big and small lake in the Emerald Marshal Palace was reflecting a bright moon. Beside the bright moon were many lotus clouds, high up in the sky, in the middle of Green Willow House. Yi Chun turned on the crystal light in the room and was reading the sword scripture. The sword scripture was not a secret book. It talked about the ancient swordsman's understanding of sword principles. Some of the theories were very shallow, and some were very profound. Just a word or two was enough to make people ponder endlessly. Some didn't talk about sword arts, but about mentality. What mentality could make people enter the best state, and what mentality could make people have a chance to break through the shackles of sword arts. There were even some descriptions of sword will, but it was very mysterious. Good book. Yi Chun couldn't help but praise. Although this sword scripture couldn't directly improve one's fighting ability in sword art, it could help a swordsman gain a lot of theoretical knowledge. Theoretical knowledge should never be underestimated. For a martial artist, he might be able to become a powerful warrior without any theoretical knowledge, but he would never be able to become a great master. A great master would need to have a huge knowledge base. Only in this way, he would be able to learn from hundreds of different schools of thought and create his own path and theory. As he immersed himself in the contents of the sword scripture, Yi Chun gradually forgot about the time. Outside the yard, the moonlight was like water and the stars were shining brightly. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew over from afar, stirring up a part of the lake. The head elder and the others, who were resting, were all confused. Just now, they had sensed that there was a sharp chi flashing past, but when they tried to sense it carefully, they couldn't find anything. It was like it was just an illusion. Su Jing, who was meditating, opened her eyes. She subconsciously thought of Yi Chun, then closed her eyes and ignored him. There were only 13 pages in the sword scripture. Although Yi Chun had read it very carefully, he still finished it in less than half an hour. After waking up from his meditation, Yi Chun felt that his mind had become much clearer. Holding the hilt of the hidden cloud sword in his hand, Yi Chun could feel it even more clearly. He felt like something obscure was about to burst out from the bottom of his heart, which was extremely mysterious. It was the sword intent. After thinking for a while, Yi Chun found that his half-step sword intent had become even more solid. At his level, he had already reached a bottleneck, and breaking through it was not something that could be done in a day or two. He had to spend a long time to polish the sharpness of his sword intent. On the contrary, even if there was only a slight improvement, he would be able to clearly sense it. If it was the half-step sword intent before, then now it was a step further from the half-step sword intent. There was only a thin layer of thin gauze between the half-step sword intent and the real sword intent. As long as there was a slight breeze, the gauze would be lifted, and the essence of the sword intent would emerge in his heart. Letting out a long breath, Yi Chun murmured to himself, I did not expect that a normal sword spell could be so useful. It saved me a lot of time to train, and with just a little bit of comprehension, I will be able to master the sword intent in no time. I really have to thank you for this. Yuan Xiumei. At this moment, if Yuan Xiumei knew that Yi Chun had gained a lot from the sword scripture, she would definitely be stunned. She had been studying this sword scripture for a long time, but she couldn't find anything special about it. At most, it had made her fighting style more practical. Standing up, Yichin opened the window and looked at the moonlight for a while. After a while, when he had calmed down, Yichin closed the window and started his daily zhenqi training. Nothing happened that night. The next morning, the lake was shrouded in a thin layer of mist, which looked pure and holy. The quiet Emerald Martial Palace gradually became lively, filled with people's voices. Some of the leaders of the big forces who couldn't make it to the Sky Cloud Martial School yesterday had also arrived. The scene was 10 times more spectacular than the inter-disciple ranking competition of the Sky Cloud Martial School. After all, young Master Emerald had stepped into the clasping Yuan realm, which was not something a small inter-disciple ranking competition could compare with. If everything went well, in the next 10 years, young Master Emerald would definitely become the pillar of the Emerald Martial Palace, and his fame would definitely not be any less than the leaders of the top 5 martial institutions. During the celebration banquet, the most outstanding disciples from the top martial institutions will definitely compete with each other. At that time, we will be able to watch the top geniuses of the Windy Nation fight. Unfortunately, those top disciples won't come, otherwise it would be a grand occasion. It's already very good. People like North Snow Fastblade Lynch and Stoneman Sherpatian are basically as powerful as young Master North Snow and young Master Dwamu. Only young Master Emerald, who has stepped into the clasping Yuan realm, is more powerful than the others. That's right, it's really scary. In the Emerald Martial Palace, it's already quite good to have one genius at the child level. In addition to young Master Emerald, the Absolute Palm, Lu Wuxiang, and the Stoneman Sherpatian are both at this level. Plus the Traceless Snow Ji Shuyan who has recently emerged. There are 3 of them in total. Yeah, the Emerald Martial Palace has never been short of top geniuses. Although Lu Wuxiang and Sherpatian are listed in the second group of young generation in the Windy Nation, everyone knows that they are definitely the top of the second group. They are almost as powerful as young Master Dwanmu and young Master North Snow. On the road between the lakes, some people who had just arrived were discussing with each other.